to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I'm your host. My name is Bryan Vitale. Joining me today, I have the whole usual crew. We've got Josh Torres.
We're on the last month of 2023.
We have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
We have James Glizio.
So many more RPGs to play. Only one more week to get to them.
And we have Chow Min Woo.
Better pick a good one. I did not.
This is the first December podcast for RPG Site and the Tetracast, and this is the last regular published Tetracast of 2023. So, and the reason for that is because obviously we'll record this podcast for you today, and we'll get it published during the week. And next week, the crew here, plus hopefully a lot of extended RPG Site staff and contributors, will be recording our Game of the Year 2023 podcast. We'll record that next week, but it likely won't be published until next year. So in terms of on the listener side, this will be the last published podcast of the year. So of course we'll go into that near the end of the podcast, but it goes into say, it's always a pleasure to hear all the feedback. We thank you so much for listening, all that. And we're going to be back next week recording anyway, but we know for all of our listeners, we will be absent throughout the next week through the winter holidays, and you will hear back from us in late December, early January for the Game of the Year cast. More details on that will come on the site, so just stay tuned to our socials, to our Twitter feed, on the site itself, etc., etc. And that'll be something that will be published New Year's Eve, New Year's Day is usually when we get those up. But as for this podcast, this is basically our last regular chance to talk about RPGs that released in 2023. So there really isn't
before that, I just want to extend a massive thank you to all of our listeners. We've been getting a lot of messages throughout the week because Spotify has released all the most listened things you've done for in the year, and we've gotten a lot of messages saying, hey, I got my results back, and I listen to you guys a lot, and we've been ranked for some people as their most listened podcast on Spotify. And that's just incredibly humbling, and we're just forever grateful for our listeners. We kind of do this partially for us, mostly for people as well. Just kind of having a voice for the site and kind of just sharing things that we enjoy on the site. So it's been just once again. Thank you so much to everyone who listens to us. That's amazing. We don't go into this expecting a crazy amount of listeners or anything. We're just here just to have fun, and we're glad that you're part of the ride.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, this podcast really is a hobbyist endeavor. We do this because we enjoy it. We like seeing the feedback that we get. We like getting a chance to discuss the games. I kind of think it helps round out, at least from my personal opinion, my opinion on games that I normally wouldn't try, being able to talk with all you guys here on the podcast and kind of expand my boundaries a bit. And even though our YouTube views or our downloads or our podcast starts might not change from week to week, the fact that people can post their Spotify Wrapped and say oh yeah, I've listened to 100 hours of your podcast this year, it really does make it someone's finding value out of this or an entertainment out of this. And it really is quite motivating. And it kind of makes me excited to go into the next year. Hell yeah, we're going to continue doing this. At least that's my position. So I hope y'all feel the same. And then, of course, related to that, I was out the last couple of weeks. I was out on travel with family doing some Thanksgiving travel. So thank you to Josh, Adam, James, Chow, and the team for holding down the fort for the last couple of weeks. I believe Colin was able to jump on either last week or the week before to talk about something.
Tactica.
Tactica, that's what it was.
Right.
And we're hoping to get them on hopefully early next year to potentially talk about some December releases. And I guess that's one thing I will say. We'll obviously cover this again when it comes to Game of the Year stuff. But in terms of programmatically, the RPG site calendar, so to speak, we kind of focus on a December to December calendar. So this is one of those things where it matters more in some context than others. But when it comes to Game of the Year, when it comes to our reader poll, more on that later, we treat the year as anything that released last December through this November as kind of in play. So when we, I guess I'll go ahead and give it the shout out now. We have the reader poll for the Readers Game of the Year 2023. If you go to our Facebook or our Twitter page, you should see that retweeted often throughout the month of December. And that is for your favorite game of 2023 and your most anticipated game of 2024 from December of last year through November of this year. So as an example, that means games like Chained Echoes are in play for this year, and games like Dragon Quest Monsters, The Dark Prince are in play for next year. And I won't belabor that point. That'll be very clearly, explicitly labeled in our social media post and in the RPG site, Game of the Year articles, et cetera, and so on. So going into this podcast, I'm taking a look at our outline here. There's actually a fair bit of news in terms of just a few game announcements, some new trailers of existing games, a lot of release dates into the first 2 quarters of next year. In terms of games to be playing, it's since this is our last real week to get some games under our belt before the Game of the Year, end of the year stuff. It looks like a lot of us on the podcast have kind of taken the opportunity to tackle our backlogs. So there really is no headliner here. A couple games that have released later in the year that we've always kind of wanted to circle back around to. Well, it looks like we've had a chance to circle back around to these, plus a few surprising games, indie releases from the last week that we'll have a chance to talk about. So that's kind of going to be the theme of this podcast as our last recording for the year.
And don't worry, we know that Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince came out this week for Switch. Colin and a few others are playing through it on our site. I intend to get around to it, but it's just it's one of those things, as Bryan mentioned, like when it comes to like our kind of main event for the end of this year, I kind of working more towards the like things that I might potentially want to like go to bat for at the Game of the Year stuff, more so than like recent releases that I'll probably get to later this month.
And of course, in an ideal world, all the years would have clean divisions. But of course, as we go into next 2024, some of us will still be playing games from 2023, like past when the Game of the Year stuff takes place. That's how it is. We always kind of go with the time and availability that we have. But without further ado, we'll go into some of the games that people here on the cast have been able to tackle over the last week. We're going to start out with a game that Josh was able to speak to. I believe it was on a Steam Next Fest festival.
Yeah, like I did a preview
or
for it
summer
before.
time frame.
Yeah, this
and
game
that
is
is the
called
game Wandering Sword, and I'll hand it off to you at this point. Yeah, so Wandering Sword, we talked about it previously in a preview context, but over the last couple of weeks, Josh was able to go through the full release of the game that came out a couple months ago.
Yeah, I mentioned last weekend. I was barely starting Wandering Sword, and something that I've been really wanted to get to before end of the year stuff. And I'm glad this is the game that I'm choosing because this game fucking kicks ass. For people who don't know, Wandering Sword is published by Spiral Up Games, developed by the Swordsman Studio. And this is that it made a big splash at its announcement. This is like the HD 2D looking Chinese wuxia RPG that boasted that it had both turn-based and real-time battle systems in it. And I'll go expand on that more later. But the gameplay, as I mentioned in my preview, is a lot like Live-A-Live, where in battles it's based on grid movement, and you navigate and do actions this grid based on this action bar filling up for characters, much like Live-A-Live. So that the grid isn't like necessarily isometric. It's kind of like more the overhead horizontal view, and you can go up and down, left and right, and then positional attacks matter. While side attacks will do more damage, while back attacks will do that damage up plus accuracy bonus. And this is a really interesting thing to consider when you think about how you can how the turn-based and the real-time aspects of it are toggleable. It's not like Trails of the Daybreak or Kuro no Kiseki, where you seamlessly switch from like action into turn-based and vice versa. There's more of a toggle that you put like out of battle there. Do you want to be in turn-based mode or real-time mode? And this surprisingly has like substantial like I guess consequences in terms of like how you approach battle. So I'll get into that a little bit more once I kind of contextualize what you're going into. This is basically, if you watched wuxia films, this is like a classic wuxia tale where you play this kind of random nobody at the beginning called his name's Yuan Yi. You don't create a character. There's pretty much like a set predetermined character that has like that participates in their story, go through the character arc. It's not like you're not like a blank slate necessarily. At the beginning of the game, your caravan gets attacked, and everyone pretty much dies except you and like this grand master martial artist that saves you from that attack. Yeah, but in that attack, you got poisoned. So and the grandmaster martial artist has no way to treat you. So he kind of drops you off at what would become your mentor and kind of takes some time to at the beginning, like kind of like the prologue, to heal yourself from this poison. You start um, exploring, very classic ancient Chinese martial arts concepts like gathering your ki, got like sort of like manipulating your eternal energy, kind of awakening to like your potential as a martial artist, essentially. So you work with this mentor to go through it. Eventually, within like the first hour or so, um, your mentor has some skeletons in his closet, in the sense that like his past is starting to come back to him, because in his past he betrayed this faction called the Wudang sect, and he meant to go retreat and like basically he made a family with another person who betrayed their own faction, and that's sort of a taboo in where the setting is. Not supposed to really mingle with people from other disciplines, especially not start a family with them. So people who are out, who he has like kind of messed with in the past, try to come after him, and uh in a very big like climactic like first act in the game, like to cap off the prologue, yeah, as you're escaping this cave where it had like a venom to counteract your poison. There's like a lot of representatives of like major factions that'll be more important down the story come out to get him, but your mentor is sort of weakened because he had to use some of his power to you know uh, heal you pretty much with that venom.
This is
So
like a
This
common
is the
trope in Musha, where
yeah,
people get poisoned all the time, and then they have to use
yes,
key to heal you. And when they
yep,
use their key to heal you, they're kind of out of a commission for months or whatever. So you have to protect the person that used their key.
yeah. So
and the framework of the game,
mhm,
just before I go on to the story, is it like
yeah.
this sounds like a judgment thing, but I don't mean it that way. But is this game like linear, like you choose, like you don't really have a choice in protagonist or story route? It's just more straight A to B.
It is. It is. It has a main story. You do have a set main protagonist. It is linear in the sense that you have a set main character and you have a story that you can go through. But there is a lot of non-linear elements in terms of like the order you want to tackle things. In the sense that like I could like go recruit like party members way before that I could visibly do, depending on like by kind of taking advantage of what the game kind of gives you. I'll
And
get
the
to.
reason I ask that is just because like the HD 2D, I think of like Live Alive or Octopath, which of course have a lot of like choose a protagonist, or even like Triangle Strategy, choose a route. Where this is more seems like a little bit more traditionally organized.
A little bit, yeah, but the framework of it, it gives you a lot to play around with, and that sort of surfaces in the way like you interact with its gameplay systems. Well, I'll touch upon in a sec, because like
Okay.
the whole setup is like kind of gives you a better idea of like what you're doing as this character. So the outcome of this like event is pretty much your mentor dies, saving you and his daughter, and but outside of that cave, since you yourself are too weak to like do anything from that, a certain faction kidnaps the daughter, and you're kind of left for dead pretty much. Like everyone is like kind of pieces out, and you're kind of left like, fuck, I really fucked up. Like the your mentor's dead, the daughter's kidnapped, and you're like, what am I gonna do from here? Obviously you made a promise with your mentor that you'll protect the daughter no matter what. So you kind of set off on this journey to go back and get his daughter. And so like the very very early thing, is like a very early story beat is like you eventually go join the faction that your mentor used to be from, this Wudang sect, and then I think that's when the main story really kicks off, when you start taking on missions for this Wudang sect because it feeds into its first main storyline arc against this uh, uh, antagonist faction called the Tian Long Gang. So what I mean by the gameplay systems, how you take advantage of them, Brian, is um, at the very very early on before you join this sect, before you even meet them, you get word of like, hey, this local bandits nearby have gone to this mountain and have been kidnapping children from this nearby village. Like some locals saw, oh, one of them saw that like this kidnapped the small girl was taken there, and then of course you're like, oh, that might be her, you know. So you go to this mountain, and once again, like you kind of get your ass kicked, because you kind of get ambushed, and then you're taken into a prison cell, and then eventually you take this time to learn one of like the sutras that your mentor gave you, because the main reason some of these factions want to go after your mentor was because he had this sutra, like this manual called the Five Immortals Sutra, pretty much. And you know, obviously, a very classic trope in wuxia is like you kind of have like this sort of like artifact or this manual that like has it contains like a lot of like hidden power, you know. So you take you take some time to kind of try to teach yourself some aspects of this um sutra that your uh mentor gave you, and it's still incomplete, but you kind of get your first like ultimate move from it. And then as you bust out of that prison cell, you meet this mysterious woman that you'll come to know later on, but she's referred to as the Lady in Red. Now, when you get this Lady in Red, she's a temporary guest party member, and you can go like, you know, continue the storyline and do what you want, like, you know, like, but eventually after this like story section with her, she'll leave your party. But alternatively, you can go the other way and like delay the main story and go do like other stuff, like go do other side quests, go do other things that like you probably weren't meant to do like at this point of the game. But since you have this powered up guest party member, she'll carry you through these like other portions of the game. So before I even like went to go went like proceeded through the storyline, I actually went and got like two additional optional party members that normally you couldn't really get until later on, until like you're more able and have like more sort of like mainstay party members. But since I had this guest party member in me, like the game is flexible enough to like start the storyline, um and then yeah, I didn't actually get those party members. Now that I think about it, I started like the first step of getting one of them, and then once you complete that first difficult step, you can get this optional party member, and then getting her as a permanent party member will unlock the prerequisite for another optional party member. So, but then there's other side quests that are much more difficult to do if you were on your own or with like the first tutorial party member. Like that's totally optional as well. But those side quests are more durable now because you have this guest party member with you. Like,
You know what this reminds me of, even though it's not quite the same, and I bet you Adam is going to agree with me if I know him, which I might not. But Final Fantasy 12, you get Larsa on your team,
yeah,
as a guest party member who has just like, I believe it's infinite high potions or infinite curas or something. So he's basically just like a free white mage in a sense. And then you go and do all the optional stuff and like say like, all right, now you do all the hard stuff while you have the guest party member with you.
yeah,
That's
pretty
kind of what it
much.
reminded me of.
Yeah, and another as you're going through the game, it'll take a little bit because you know, obviously the Wandering Sword is not a AAA game. It's very much like an indie scope, very much working on like on a limited, you know, sort of set of resources. So a lot of it is kind of rough around the edges in terms of presentation. But once you start speaking its language of like how the gameplay systems interact with each other, how progression works in this game, it starts to like a lot more sense, and it really captures the spirit of like how do you translate the Chinese wuxia experience into an RPG. So, for example, this game doesn't have levels at all, and I think I mentioned that in the preview as well. There's no experience bar. There's no you level up at all. How you actually gain stats like that you traditionally would get from leveling up is there are these cultivation manuals, and and you can get them from side quests. You can get them from finding them out in the world. You can even get them from like learning them from people. I'll get into that a little bit later because that's a little bit more of an involved mechanic. But essentially, as you learn more of these cultivation manuals um, and you invest like martial points into them, you'll get these things called meridian points. And meridian points are the sort of like the currency that you'll use to kind of get those stat ups. Because each character has like I forgot what it's called, but like these sort of styles that they can um, invest in, and each of these styles, which is like conception strength, um, and like a few and like four other things. Um, they're like kind of like like passive stat trees where you can use your meridian points to get stats from them, and once again, this all done by investing into cultivation manuals, and so that's kind of where your passive stats are gained from this, along with another big thing for the growth of your character is getting them better equipment as well. So that's a lot of like the things you have to manage as you're playing through the game. But it feels really nice. They have a really nice scripted where you feel like you start you kind of start feeling like no one at first. You feel like you're a chump. You're not doing much damage. You don't have much health. You feel and you're surrounded by like these much more talented martial artists. But as you start learning more cultivations and more fighting styles and more moves, and of course using consumables to um, that can be rewarded from side quests and such to permanently enhance your stats. You start growing into someone more capable, and like even have like a almost like a power ranking over each character, saying like it'll say like power like expert, power master, power outstanding. It'll give you sort of a ballpark rating of like, okay, where how capable is this character at this moment?
I've talked about this before. I don't mind games, especially RPGs, where starting out you kind of feel like you suck.
Yeah.
You kind of have to work your way up, and then
Mhm.
you eventually, as you play the game, there's that whole feeling of getting stronger and stronger. And even though it's really just numbers, in a sense, it's fun, really.
It feels
So
really good too because
that's reward.
it's reflective to the story too. Like
Mm.
you feel like even from a narrative perspective, you feel like no one's really taking you seriously. No one's really like you just feel so incapable. But then several hours as you're building your character up and going through tougher fights, like people are recognizing you now. Like, hey, holy shit, what you pulled off back there, that's incredible. Like you just barely joined our sect and you've already done so much, or like I handed you like this cultivation method and you've already like people have already like identified you and you as someone who has like the potential to like catch on to things fast, but seeing that manifest in the narrative, like it feels good. It feels like, hey, you're really rooting for this protagonist, who's kind of got like was left for dead at the very beginning, now working his way up through the world and kind of joining the ranks of like legends pretty much. um and then so now this goes into like how I mentioned earlier how you can kind of be taught things from people in this game. Almost a lot. I'm not gonna say every NPC, but a lot of NPCs. Not almost every NPC, because that'd be kind of overselling. But a lot of NPCs have this option where you can consult with them, and consulting means they'll teach you very like life skills and currently known practices or cultivation methods or skills from them. So like life skills are like fishing, alchemy, forging, and then the other column is like, hey, I'm a swordsman, or I practice pole arms. I know all these moves, but I also know these cultivation methods as well. And those have usually three prerequisites to learn them. an affinity prerequisite, a martial point prerequisite, and stamina prerequisite. So the first two are pretty achievable because martial points you get from every battle, from completing side quests, just normal things, pretty much. Stamina is something that you regain after you rest. Um, so I don't know why the stamina system is there, to be honest, but it's pretty easy to regain stamina once you consume it. Um, and the affinity prerequisite is something that is pretty interesting in this game because it is a lot of there's a lot of inventory bloat in this game. That is one of the things that you will notice very early on. Like if you're not actively selling stuff, like being very diligent about selling stuff, your inventory will bloat pretty fast. But there's no inventory limit, so like you just have a ton of fucking shit on you. And like I haven't had the need to like sell anything, so I'm still pretty good on money, like just doing side quests and progressing story. So like I just have a ton of shit on me, and navigating it is something that I could be better at. But there's a sort option, but it's hard to let go of the fact that hey, you have like tons of shit on you. But you can gift a lot of NPCs in this game, and what they want is usually has a heart icon on your inventory when you're browsing through inventory and you're about to gift them something, and that's how you raise affinity with them, like your relationship with them. At certain points, you can start doing more, interacting more things with the character, depending on their affinity rating. So, for example, if you reach 20 affinity rating with someone, you can spar with them, and if you're it's a one-on-one battle. If you're successful, you'll get like 2 to 3 items from the inventory for free because you won that spar, and you can do this again and again. It's not a one-time thing. Um, but also but you're learning certain things from them, like certain moves or cultivation methods. Um, you might need to reach an affinity rating like 60 or 70, so you have to keep on gifting them things that they want. And as you're gifting them, eventually there'll be some affinity thresholds where like you'll have to start gifting them items of higher quality. So at the beginning they might want something that's like maybe rare, like green, or like green rarity, I guess is the best way to put it. But eventually, like if they hit like 30 or 40, they're like, I don't want the green stuff anymore. I want you to get me something blue or better. Do you get them blue or better? Do you get them to like affinity rating 50? And they're like, okay, I don't want the blue stuff anymore. I want like the orange. So, like,
So
okay,
this is just
fine.
like dating in real life, I think, right?
Yes, exactly, right?
Okay.
So and eventually, once you'll get to like, affinity rating 70 or so, depending on what like the move that they have, depending on like what the move requirements are, you can just like learn it from them once you've achieved all those prerequisites. There's not the only way to get those. Like, it's just one way to get those. Like most of the moves, you may meet on someone, like you may have already learned them. Same with cultivation methods, because once again, there's like different avenues to attain these things. It's like different activities you can do. You could just do it by trading, or you could do it by doing a side quest. And it's the same result of getting this like cultivation method or move that you made. You just don't know it obviously right away because you don't know what the rewards are for any given quest or thing, obviously. So
Is this every NPC?
Not at every NPC, a lot of NPCs. They're all
Most of
marked.
them, okay.
Yeah, most of them. Um, as for like party members, there are a lot of party members. Obviously, it's kind of interesting because you do get story companions, but it's pretty far into the game where you get story companions that actually join your party permanently. Um, all the other ones before that, like I think if I was playing this game and I didn't get any of the optional party members at all, I'd be soloing just with you and Yi, just the protagonist alone for like well over 12 to 13 hours of this game. If I didn't get any other optional party members. Um, which you could do if you want. I mean, it's a lot more challenging, obviously, but it's doable if you have the willpower to do it. Um, but when it comes to optional party members, this game has a lot. So aside from like the 3 to 4 story companions that you get, there's like well over like 2 dozen, more than 2 dozen optional party members that you can get in this game.
I forgot to mention, does it have permadeath for the optional characters?
So there is some optional party members that you can forever lose if there's it's only a few of them, but there are definitely some weird requirements for them that like if you fuck up something, they'll be gone forever. Like for example, the martial artist at that school in the first big town, the Chen Lenchi, if your affinity rating with him is too high at the end of his quest chain, you'll lose him forever if his affinity is too high.
You know what this
which is
reminds me
very
of?
weird.
You know what this reminds me of? Only Bryan will understand this. It's just like Pentiment. I don't know if Bryan's
Actually,
here.
I need more teeing up. Like, how so?
If your little follower guy, whose name I forget,
Oh,
likes you too much,
yeah. He refuses to leave. Okay,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
okay,
Yeah, so very to chow for a very very like isolated example. If his affinity rating for you is too high, at the end of his companion quest, he'll have murderous urges towards you, and you'll have to you have to pretty much to calm him down. You have to kill him, and that's it. That's the end of it, and you lose him forever.
That part's not like Pentiment.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, so you have to deliberately lower his affinity rating, which you can do once in his companion quest. You have the opportunity to do it once in his companion quest, and if you don't do it, then you fucked up.
I never heard of a game where Field goes haywire for having affinity too high with you.
I looked at it, I was like, holy shit, that's fucking crazy. But for a lot of the party members, there's usually like some sort of like prerequisite to obviously get them. Like some of them are main story gated. Some of them you have to kind of go out of your way and like do a side quest chain. Some of them have like pretty obscure requirements that the community has kind of dissected and like figured out mostly how to get them. But some of them once they're available, you have to actually gift them till their affinity rating is 60, and then you can invite them into your party as well. So some of them is like not as straightforward as you think it might be. So like sometimes you have to go through all this and then gift them and do the affinity rating for them to join you. And then up to 5 party members can join you in battles. That's including your protagonist. So like it's your protagonist and then 4 other party members. But when it comes to like you have to remove anyone from like your party, not necessarily. So there's kind of a weird thing where you can deploy people wherever you want. Like you can kind of swap people in and out of combat when you're not in combat. Like you can choose like, hey, I want this polearm dude, and I'll deploy him into battle before when you're out of battle. And then, but if you want to replace him with another person, you can choose another person from your team and just like replace them. They won't ever really leave you once you recruit them, unless you deliberately choose the remove option and then you have to go back into their town and like reinvite them. I don't know why you do that, but you can do that. But your party list kind of becomes a little bit. It's funny because your party list becomes really like crowded, right? Like eventually you have to have a scroll bar to like browse through all your party members. You start getting a lot of them, and even then, like when it comes to like story people and like guest party members, they'll join you in battle plus your deployed squad. So you can have like your deployed 5 plus like the story mandatory or guest party members. So you can easily have up to like 8 to 10 people in battle at once, going at it. Which is, it's pretty cool because like you just have like a freaking mini army going at it against like a few other people. So this is where it comes like this is where the turn-based and real-time battle system gets really interesting, because like most of the time you'll probably be on turn-based. Like I'd say 80 to 85% of the time you'll be on turn-based. You can have it manual or auto battle. Obviously, auto battle means that everyone will take when it's their turn. They'll do whatever they want. And it's everything. I forgot how speed is determined on there, but there's a turn order as well. And the turn-based mode is pretty much what you'd expect from this type of RPG. So that's pretty self-explanatory. When it comes to like your moves, you have like several options. You have like a regular move, a special move, a mighty move, a unique move, and then ways to like buff yourself, uh, and all that sort of stuff. And most of them work off of cooldown. So after you use one, you have to wait a certain amount of turns to use that again. So pretty simple and straightforward when it comes to turn-based. Now, real-time mode is very interesting because it still is the same battle grid and same perspective. The only thing is that changes in real-time mode is that as soon as a character's action bar is filled, they will immediately take their turn without there's no turn order. It's irrespective of like any sort of like freezing or turn based or anything. It's like as soon as their action bar is filled, they will do their action right away. And this for anyone in your squad, anyone in the enemy squad, and also for the only one you're controlling in real time mode is Yuan Yi himself, just the protagonist himself. Everyone else is automated right away on that. And so this is good if like you're grinding like lower mobs, you're going through like weaker mobs, and you're just trying to end up battles as fast as possible. Because battles will go by very very fast in real time mode, especially when you turn on game speed times 2 or battle speed times 2 in it. So that's that's kind of a utilization of real time mode, but that's not really the primary use of real time mode. Real time mode is most effective during 1v1 duels, and a lot of times you will be forced to do 1v1 duels with your protagonist. That's why it's recommended that all your stat ups, all your consumables that like raise meridian points, like you want to get your protagonist basically as buff as possible, because there's a lot of like mandated 1v1 fights, whether it's a story and both on side quests. Now, there'll be some tough enemies, obviously, when you're fighting 1v1s. And in turn-based mode, some of them are damn near impossible because you're gated by stats. You feel like you're not doing enough damage, yeah, but it's like you're getting close, but not close enough. But you have to you have to respect the turn-based system, because you take a turn, then they take their turn. There's no easy way to kind of dodge out of their attack. Now in real time mode, since you can take a turn immediately when your action bar is filled, and you can see the enemy's action bar, you know when they're gonna attack. So in real time mode, when you see their action bar is filled, you wait like maybe 1.5 seconds, then you move out of the way and you actually dodged in real time their attack. So you kind of finagle with the real time system to actually beat 1v1 duels against stronger enemies, because you have the luxury of dodging out of the way consciously. Which is
Sometimes if I'm feeling especially cynical, I think like a lot of action RPGs, in terms of like the skill involved or whatnot, it's just like, as long as you can dodge, you can win. And
yeah,
I mean that's kind of intentionally cynical. But I totally understand. Turn it to action mode, because then you can dodge, and that
pretty much. Yeah,
advantage.
It's kind of like an interesting like wrinkle on the system. It's like, okay, well this fight would kind of be almost impossible in turn based, but since you can dodge, you can win this fight. And sure enough, that's there are some like tougher like 1v1 duels that I definitely redid. I was like, I'm gonna turn it to real time mode and go and face them like this, and and it's much more manageable like that. And I think that's a really funny way to like kind of engage with the system. Like for me, I think that's really funny, and it's entertaining in a way that like they utilize this real time mode. I'm sure they kind of knew it going in, but I do like how it gives you the option, like you can go kind of cheese this if you want. And it's like, okay, sure. And that's sort of the important factor of 1v or real time mode, is those 1v1 duels. More like you can use them for grinding really fast if you want to. I think that's the most effective use of the real time mode in the game. So I still have a lot of the game left. It's still super engaging. I like a lot of the characters that I met, both optional and story mode. And I'm at the point of the game where um, I finished destroying the Tian Long gang, which is like the first major antagonist faction in the game. But obviously, there's more to it than that. There's more behind the scenes at work. So, um, and it's kind of crazy because this game, I was talking with some friends who played it at launch, and at launch, this game didn't have a world map, and that's one of like the most useful features in this game that they didn't launch with, because like when you go in the game and you press like the select button, you'll get like basically a world map of like where all the cities are, where all the towns are, and where your player marker is, and they also added like a fast travel system where they set up like horse stables by like major cities where you can just pay a measly 100 points to like fast travel to them. But it's one of the most useful things in the game. Like, how did you play this game without a world map? Like, I'd be so freaking lost if I didn't have this world map to like go, because there's a lot of like places in the game, and a lot of like very very often in this game it will say go here to like proceed, or go here and do this. And whenever I see like, oh, there's like a whenever there's an objective, it doesn't give you markers on like where that thing is and where you go. You go look at your world map and say, okay, I have to go travel here, so I use this road to go there. Or if I unlock fast travel, I would go to the nearest fast travel point there. That's just very very convenient. And and I'm just like thinking like, man, I cannot believe this launched without a world map, because it's like one of the most useful features in the game to kind of,
like the game's constantly being updated still. So I'm
yeah.
just wondering, it's like if I was reviewing on day one, it's like, and now you're reviewing it, your impression for the game is probably completely different, if I'm right. No.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, so far I've been really having a blast. I think this is kind of a really, just a really fresh sort of take on this genre, like having this classic wuxia story, and the way that the systems really reinforce that feeling of it, the cultivations and gathering key, and just engaging with like plots that like you would see in these types of films. That's like, it's not like the most complex thing, but it's very relaxing and very very comfortable. Um, and I really like it. I'm very surprised at like how much this game has really um stuck on. I really like.
No, this was one that was definitely on my radar when it was announced early in the year. It's just that this year has been so packed, so it's always just trying to pick your
Yeah,
battles and
when did
figure
it
out
release?
what you have
September.
time for.
Yeah,
September
September.
was
I was gonna
crazy.
pull up his Steam page to see like what the reception was, and
I think
yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's been very 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 positive on
very
Steam.
positive. 11,000 total reviews. So yeah, it's been received pretty well.
And that's I'm glad that like the devs saw success in this, because they're like, even graphically, and the amount of like animation work has gone to like unique sprites in this game. Like, it is there's a lot of effort put into this game. Like, it's very impressive. I think my only like gripe with its presentation, that I it's understandable why it has this such a limited scope, but I wish it had like more like unique battle themes and or more unique music in general, you know, which I understand why there isn't. That's kind of my wish at the moment. It's it's so cool, and I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Josh, for going through your further impressions on Wandering Sword. And we're just going to keep going around the table here, and we'll next pick up with James and some of the games that he touched on in his backlog. One of these is actually a new release, and one came out about a month ago. James, I'll let you pick the order you want to talk about these. We put up 2 games on the list here. It looks like you've put in some time with Lunacid and Noctuary. So tee us up on what these games are. You can go in whichever order you prefer.
I think I'll start with Lunacid. I think it's Lunacid. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. I think that's right. So obviously, From Software's the Dark Souls games, super popular. Basically, just springboarded a whole like slew of games that are very much aping from the same concept. So Lunacid is that, but for Kingsfield. Basically,
which first person dungeon.
Which, if you need to be teed up, is from software prior to Dark Souls.
Yeah, they're first person like real time dungeon crawler type things, which I've never actually played a Kingsfield. I should probably do that. I
did play a Kingsfield. I think okay, so Kingsfield was really weird in the States because like the Kingsfield that came out in America was actually Kingsfield 2. I never played the original Kingsfield 1. Only the one that came out for PlayStation here in the West, and apparently that was Kingsfield 2. It didn't get rebranded as that. It's kind of like the Final Fantasy.
It was a weird time.
Yeah,
I think reception for those games back in those days is very mixed. You either love them or you really hate them, but they have its own charm. I think that's how the
I mean, dude, that was the first PlayStation game I ever played. Was Kingsfield in the States. That was crazy. I had the patience of a saint, I guess. Yeah, Kingsfield is definitely one of the classic dungeon crawlers that is not. It is very obtuse. It is very brutal, but it definitely nailed down that sort of like horror survival feeling, like wandering through the dungeon, hopeless and without direction.
And Lunacid is trying to evoke that same feeling.
Exactly. So yeah, it's pretty neat. There's all these sorts of little systems that work together, like so you have levels obviously, but you're not told when you can level up, so you have to go to like a save point and try to level up every so often to see if you can. And then the way levels up happen is every level you get a certain amount of skill points you can put into each of your stats, and you have some skills that are just like, it makes it so that your like weapon swings do more damage. Int makes it so that not only do you do more damage with spells, but also it increases your maximum MP and also how quickly spells charge, because when you try to use spells in Lunacid, there's a charge up time. And the charge time depends on the spell itself, but also, again, your int. And the spells themselves are actually part of magic rings you can equip too, and you can just find them all around the world. The level design is interesting. There's obviously stuff like hidden walls and all sorts of stuff that you can consider when you're like exploring. I'm only about like 4 or 5 hours in, so I'm like a decent chunk in, but not like super far in. But I've been enjoying it. It looks like a PlayStation 1 game, like very obviously by design. Like you can look at the screenshots, and it's even trying to like use some of the same like graphical effects and whatnot. It's a lot of fun so far. Also, it's Steam Deck verified and runs perfectly on the OLED. Can get a 90 FPS. No, but yeah, it's like runs at 90 FPS on the OLED, and I get like 6 hours of battery life, and it's like, oh man, this is like perfect for the Steam Deck.
Yeah, Lunacid is very, very cool because like I was watching some friends play it and like for extensively, and it's really cool that like you get like a whenever you level up in it, it's a manual stat up decisions, so you can choose for a very specialized build. I saw my friend being crazy and did like a very balanced equalized build where all his stats are almost the same stat. Like, oh my god, like because usually usually specialize. Yeah, exactly. Usually specialize on one or the other. But then like there's some really cool like spells and weapons. Like I saw he used a lot of like this candle spell where like he holds up a candle and then like the flame shoots out a fireball from it, and like and the light travels with that fireball as well. So you can almost use it as a light source. And like then the environment and monster design, they're almost very dreamlike. Like I saw like a design where it's like just a floating manta ray just like wandering around. Just like and the color design of this game is really, it's not dreary or as dark as like a Kingsfield, but it's more
dreamlike.
Yeah, it's more dreamlike. It's a really interesting vibe for this.
Yeah, it's really good. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. But But yeah, I'll keep playing it. I hope to have finished at least one playthrough by the time Game of the Year starts next week. Because I figured probably worth having somebody talk about it, because it's like, I feel like all of us feel this way, where it's like there's so many RPGs, and the thing is that there's so many indie RPGs that release like every week, and it's like sometimes we just don't have the time to check them out. So we got to at least try and like play some of them. So if there's maybe something worth talking about, we can talk about it.
Yeah, and the music in Lunacid is really good as well.
Yeah,
I really like the. And another a nice little touch to it is like there's an in-game manual, but it's actually like almost like a diary. Where it's very much like one of those old-time manuals that you kind of read through, and you get a lot of like info out of it that like the game doesn't explicitly teach you. You're encouraged,
like upgrading weapons, like weapons, like some weapons have XP. You can tell if they do, because there's like an additional XP bar, or the only XP bar like on the UI if you're using a weapon that has the ability to be enhanced. And once you fill up the bar, and it's obvious when it's filled up because it glows, you can go to this oil pit in the main hub, interact with it with that weapon equipped, and then you enhance the weapon. And it's like, if you don't read the manual, you won't know about that at all.
Yeah. I love games that have really well made manuals, and it's like, if you don't understand what you're doing, you should probably take a look at the manual. That was me with Xenoblade Cross.
You know what this conversation is reminding me of? I really, one of these days, seriously need to sit down for like a week or two and actually fucking play La Mulana. I've tried on several occasions, and I've gotten as far as like 4 like areas in, like I've which is a decent amount. But the problem with La Mulana is unless you're using a guide, and I refuse to use a guide.
Yeah.
Every time I've played La Mulana, I've bought a notebook explicitly for it.
Yeah, it's a very obtuse game that like you get more out of it, the more like manual observation work you get into it. Because if you just use a guide, you kind of destroy the point of that game.
Yeah, but yeah, one of these days I'll play that, and then the sequel that I kickstarted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, enough about Lunacid. The other game I played this week was this much like Wandering Sword, this is another Chinese indie game called Noctuary, and the developer is, let me check Steam really quick. It's their first game on Steam. Yeah, it's their first game on Steam. I believe that they have developed stuff for the Chinese indie scene in the past. This is just the first game of theirs that's getting a Western release, or at least one on a platform where more people would see it. So it's a mix between a visual novel and a top-down isometric like action RPG, kind of like a Diablo. It's less of an RPG than I expected heading in. There's still RPG elements. Like every time you do like a mission or whatnot, you get these like basically experience points called photons that you can use to upgrade certain stats. And then also, as you do side content, you unlock these like perks you can equip to this blessing flower, and they can have different like effects and whatnot. Gameplay wise, pretty interesting. You have 2 main characters, Fancia and Alina, and basically whenever you're in combat, both of them are attacking, but you only control one of them at a time, and each of the 2 characters has 3 different styles you can use. And the thing that the styles change is your main attack and your meter attack. And so, like, for example, Fancia is mostly focused on ranged attacks, while Alina is on melee. Like, Alina has like a sword, like these Gundam, what are they called? Newlifts? Funnels. And then also a spear, and then like Fantia has like all these ranged attacks, like a staff, a bow, and then just like orbs that spew out like fire, which is interesting. But so I mentioned two things that's not to be, well, what's the best way of putting it? So I mentioned that this game is a bit of a visual novel, and I also mentioned this is the first game from this Chinese developer that's got an English translation. You can tell.
Does it sound machine translated or just?
It's not machine translated. Well, I do want to stress that the translation has issues, but at least you can tell that an effort was put in. Like it's one of those things where if there was like an additional like editing pass or two, it would be just fine. Like it's not even explicitly dry. You can tell that an effort was put in. It just whoever was in charge of editing needed more time or needed another pass. Like I don't think it's as bad as some other like Chinese indie games I've played in the past. And actually, one of the reasons why I was interested in trying this out when we first got like PR about it, like a week and some change ago, from the trailer, you could actually see some bits of the translation, and it seemed like it was in a decent enough state where it's like, okay, I'll give this a shot. And I do want to stress, like, there are issues with this game's translation, but they've already been fixing some typos, and I feel like it's in a decent enough state where if you can overlook some, like, every so often, like, one word where it's like, that doesn't seem like quite the right choice, or, oh, there's a typo here, then you'll still have a good time. Like, not to go into the story stuff too much, I think it's, like, a neat enough premise. Basically, this alternate world, humanity is built up of these, like, creatures called illuminators, which in the lore are the hopes of plants given life. And basically these illuminators are people, but they're made out of light itself. And the entire idea is that the plants dream up these people made of light so they can survive. And then it's weird from there, but it's pretty interesting so far. Gameplay is neat. The combat's pretty good. The boss fights I've done so far are pretty inspired. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes in the future, and I'll definitely like update folks on how I feel about it when I get further on.
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around how you describe that story premise. So people are imagining light
not
sources?
Plant people, plants
like
right. Actual plants.
You don't dream about plants?
Sometimes.
Guess they're not real enough. I don't know, the way that this game sounds to me, it sounds like Sway from Falcom. I don't know if that's kind of it, but it sounds like that to me.
I don't think I've ever heard that about that. What is it?
In terms of story or in terms of gameplay, you mean?
Gameplay, like Sway 2. Yeah. It kind of sounds like Sway.
Oh, Sway. Oh, I thought you said Sway, not Zway. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I heard Sway too, not Zway.
I like Sway. It's just like
it's pronounced Zwei.
Yeah, Zwei.
Yeah, it's Zwei.
Sorry, I'm not
German word for two, right?
Yeah. My favorite Falcom game, Zwei 2. 2.
Twos.
Yeah, but I do agree with James's general sentiment that there are so many indie games that all look interesting, and you never quite know whether they're going to be a banger or something that just kind of feels like it needed more time in the oven.
So on that note, I remember, I think it was 2019. It was November, and there was a game coming out that I was like, this sort of looks interesting, but I don't have time to play it. It might not be any good. We'll see. You know what game that was? Disco Elysium.
Oh yeah.
I mean, before it came out, it was hard to tell. You know, like
you didn't know.
All of a sudden, it's just like, holy crap! This is something. Okay.
Disco Elysium has done so much for shit posting on Twitter. So much.
Yeah, it's too bad that the studio itself is like nothing now.
Yeah.
I mean, it still exists, but
yeah. It still exists, but it's like Ship of Faces, where it's like all the components.
Honestly, I think the shit that happened with the studio and the lead devs, if anything, just kind of fits in with the themes of the game even more. If you like read the text where it's like capitalism will subsume everything, even critiques of itself. It's like, that's sure what happened.
It's a great game.
It is very funny to look at the current, like the recently released, as in today, like teaser for the Fallout like Amazon like Prime series and think, aren't they making a Disco Elysium Prime series?
Are they? Oh no way! I didn't hear about that.
This sort of sounds familiar.
No, but thank you, James, for going through Noctuary and Lunacid and your time with both of those indie games. So now, while I was out, I basically took the opportunity to try to tackle my backlog, try to knock out a bunch of different. I've been playing, I feel like, a bunch of very long RPGs in a row. So I was trying to finish out some things that I left unfinished or some shorter games while I was traveling, things that I could play on my Switch or on my Steam Deck. So really, no theme or thesis here. I was finally able to reach credits in Pokemon Violet.
Ooh.
So like a year after release. And we've had plenty of opportunity to talk about Pokemon, so I won't dwell on it too much. But one thing that I will say is that game has kind of 3 different story branches. It has this Team Star branch, the Titan Quest branch, and then like the Pokemon League branch. And each one kind of has like a key NPC that's kind of like the primary supporting character for that branch. For the League branch, you've got Nemona, the champion. You've got Arvin, who's the long-haired guy with the backpack for the Titan branch, and then you've got Penny, who's like the Eevee fanatic for the Team Star branch. And at the end of the game, there's a very short like post game where the 3 characters do get like a chance to like interact. It's like you have these 3 storylines that are pretty clearly divorced throughout most of the game, and then at the very end, they do finally allow them to intersect, but it only lasts for like an hour or 90 minutes, and that's probably the part of the game I enjoyed most. I'm like, man, I wish this game just had like an extended post game, which I haven't played the DLC yet, so maybe I'll get more of that once I get into the DLC. I did a little bit of like the Terra rating and things like that, and I could kind of see the appeal, but at that point, I'm like, all right, I got to move on to the next thing. But I'm glad I was able to. This is the first Pokemon game I've seen to completion, at least to credits, since like Gen 4. So it's been a while. And I still enjoyed it, but the same weaknesses that we've kind of harped on back and forward with Scarlet and Violet are all very still present. Usually in terms of performance. So I won't really, dig that back up. But I finished that, and I want to try to get to the DLC hopefully soon, just so it's not hanging on my backlog. We talked the last podcast that I was on before stepping out. Adam was talking about the new DLC to Tales of Arise. I think I said on that podcast that I was just gonna like not play that DLC. I was gonna hold off on it. But then I kind of like, I don't know if this is a good motivation or not to play anything, but I'm like, you know what? It's short. I can knock it out and then I don't have to worry about it, sort of thing. Like I didn't want it on my conscience. Be like, oh yeah, I never played that. So I put it on my Steam Deck. Tales of Rise runs pretty damn well on the Steam Deck. So I played through that and really kind of came away with like the same general takeaways that seems to be kind of the consensus around the DLC that Adam kind of detailed on that episode of the podcast. So it is basically more Tales of Arise without really any wrinkles at all, for better or for worse. So it, I don't know, it kind of gave me a little bit of that popcorn Tales, taste that I hadn't had since the game, was finished 2 years ago. So it was short enough and brief enough that I kind of appreciated an opportunity to revisit the game. So for all of its faults, I did enjoy that aspect of it. Then on a whim, I was looking at games that I hadn't played yet this year and hadn't had time to get to, and like what can I realistically put a dent in a week? There are some games like Lies of P where I'm like, I wanted to play this, I probably won't get to it. I believe Adam was able to like talk about this on last episode podcast. It's kind of like a backlog look, so looks like you were able to at least cover the game for the site, so that's pretty neat. Then I was looking through the list and I'm like, Infinity Strash: The Adventures of Dai, which came out in September. That game's not too long, right? I had some interest in that game back when it was announced. I watched like the first 5 episodes of the reboot anime. Sure, why not? a game that, even though it wasn't received well, both on this site, to pretty much Josh's interpretation of the game, and then like the consensus as well. But I didn't want to I wanted to experience it for myself.
That's right.
So I have not watched the full anime. So that's just contextualizing where I'm coming from. So I don't have the full context. I'm going into this game knowing of the anime, but not having watched it. So it seems like it's a retelling of a good chunk of the anime, though it skims some parts off the front and back, as far as I can tell. It actually uses its primary method of delivering its story is through like taking stills from the animation and doing voiceover on them, and then taking some of the bigger moments and actually animating those through like the actual game engine. Um, the story is well, I'll talk about the game itself first. And I don't want to, we talked about this game before, so this will be kind of an abbreviated take. The game itself is very like brief. It's very like thin in terms of like most of the levels are one-on-one boss fights, or occasionally your party, Dai, Pop, Mom, and Hunkel, versus a boss. There are very few levels that are actually involved like a field or multiple enemies. Almost everything is against a single opponent, more than half, I would say. And you pretty much level up once per battle. Like, it's very brief. It doesn't like some games have like a very slow progression ramp. Like for instance, Baldur's Gate 3, very different game, where in the course of that 100-hour game, you level up 10 or 11 times, right? Where Dragon Quest Dai is a 10-hour game where you level up 30 times. So I
quick question:
gives
did you mess
the
with the
feeling of it.
roguelike mode at all, or the run-like
I
mode?
did. I did 3 levels of it, like 3 stratuses or whatever
Because
they're called.
weirdly, that almost feels like the actual meat of the game.
Yeah,
It
It's
is. It
very
is.
strange.
Yeah.
And like that's
So,
actually like how you're, I think, supposed to power up is through that.
yeah, so it has a lot of roguelite elements, where every time you go into this temple of recollection, your actual EXP level is reset to 1, but these memory cards, I forget what they're called in game, are
Something like that.
those are what persist. So you collect those and you can tier them up, and those give you like passive stats to your attack, your HP, etc. And those are the ones that allow you to get stronger every time you do a run through the temple, even if you're restarting at level 1, because you level up these memory cards. And that also carries over to the base game. But if you're playing the base game on the standard difficulty, you don't really need to
No, you
engage
don't.
with it.
I only messed with
There
the
are.
roguelike mode after I beat the game.
Oh, I didn't realize you had already played it. I know Josh had played it. I didn't know you
I
had.
beat it in like a day, probably similar to you.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, okay. So, I actually didn't realize that. But yeah, I did make sure to do the optional side like field battles, because they usually take like 6 minutes, and you basically get like a free level up out of them. So it's like you're only handcuffing yourself if you don't do them. Um, so the game is very thin. It's not bad. It just doesn't really do anything interesting. But I do want to be optimistic about this. What I'll say is despite being like very archetypal shonen story, I enjoyed it actually quite a hell of a lot. Just there were a lot of story elements that I actually like was really like invested in. I wasn't clicking through the dialogue. I was especially like in chapters like 4 and 5, where you start to learn a little bit more about Dai's origin, about the like the villain of baddies and where they're all coming from. And it was just, I was actually enjoying it a lot. And my kind of takeaway was like, man, I should have kept watching the anime, huh?
And that was my takeaway. When
I was like, hey, go read, you know what? Go read the manga or watch the anime. That you want cool shonen shit? Let me tell you, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah, so obviously this is the recent anime is from 2021, retelling a anime from the 90s, which was an adaptation of a manga from the 80s. I hope I got all those decades right.
It's a long lineage, but yeah, it's
so
like but even but like it like the Dai is such a celebrated like Dragon Quest spin-off work in Japan, because it pretty much is like the whole like story plays out pretty much like an RPG, but like but like it takes like the very best of like shonen elements and like exemplifies that through the work, and like makes it gives itself like a long enough runtime to like really let its characters develop, and you feel for them and see their growth over time, and it really makes you root for them, and it does that very well. whether it's the original run of the manga or the shows,
And even though he comes across as a goofball, Pop really is an endearing character. I think he's kind of really designed to be a very easily likable character. So part of me is kind of like, no, he's meant to be likable. Be a hipster. You should find something to
Pop is a
criticize.
badass, dude. You think but then once you see him develop, it's like, holy shit. I'm so proud of Pop.
Yeah. Chapter 5 in Pop is very easy to like, and I was like very enthused and engaged with those parts of the story. So it's a brief enough game that despite the game itself being kind of thin, and I feel kind of bad that apparently I'm just coming away with the same takeaways that you both had, but I guess that doesn't make it any less valid. But brief enough game that I really didn't feel like I really enjoyed my time with it. It makes me eager to maybe pick up the anime again, or manga. And was worth a couple sessions to play through. You can kind of blitz through it if you're not really interested in engaging in all the roguelike stuff. But it seems like that's the sort of game where you can reach credits in like 8 hours. But if you want to put dozens of dozens into the roguelike mode or the challenge mode, you could.
If you want, I mean, that is definitely a use of your time that you can do.
Yeah, but then of course at that point it's distilled pure gameplay. So then it kind of is not the game's strength at that point. But I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I looked at it on my list and I kind of eeny meeny miny moed it out of the list. I'm like, you know what? Let me knock this one out. And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad I did that.
Well,
so,
like, you know what? The game actually looks great. Like, the game graphics are actually pretty cool.
It's got good production values, yeah.
And the music is carried by it was tracks from the anime, the new anime. And hey, that OST fucking bops.
Speaking of the OST, I assume he was on the original anime, but I'm not sure. He might have just been doing arrangements for the new anime. But Yuki Hayashi,
yeah,
the sounds sounded familiar to me. Like it just had like the same like tonality, and I'm like, where is this from? So I look him up on Spotify.
mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, he does a lot of the soundtrack for My Hero Academia. Like, oh, that's where I kind of like. You can kind of recognize it, like, oh, of course, that's the same guy. It sounds very similar, but yeah, very good soundtrack. It's kind of strange because I look at the reception of this game and it's very, very lukewarm, but it's like pretty damn good story, good soundtrack, good production values. It's just that the actual like meat and potatoes of the game is where it falls short, which is the most important thing. But still enjoyed it regardless of its shortcomings. I do recommend it. It's a game I would recommend.
I mean, when I was talking about this game when it released, I guess my takeaway was like the same as yours, but a little bit more cynical, where it's just like all the things that I'm praising about the game are things that came from elsewhere,
independent
like
of the
anime
Yeah.
or the manga. Like anything that was actually part of the game adaptation itself is bad. Anything that is not part of the game adaptation is good. Pretty much.
That's a good point. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the game is like at its best. It's when it's doing those like narrative scenes that are part of the game engine. When things are moving within the game engine and story scenes are playing out within that engine, and the music and the visuals come together in a really, really delightful way. That's where the game is at its best. It's not a lot of the game, but when it does, it's like, yes, this is what the game could have been more of, but then it wasn't.
Crocodile is also a bro.
Yes,
Crocodile's good.
Yeah.
And then after I knocked that one out, I'm like, is there any other game that's recent-ish that I could knock out and kind of like it seems like a dumb way to motivate yourself to play a game, but like the more like low-hanging fruit that I can knock off, like I'll target those this week. And completely kind of a little bit of a tonal shift, but I saw installed in my Steam library that I hadn't gotten to yet, came out I believe last December, was the Crisis Core Reunion remaster. And I'm like, you know what? We've got Rebirth coming out, which when Reunion came out, it really didn't tether into the whole remake storytelling, at least explicitly. But it's been so long since I played the PSP version of the game. My memory's super foggy. Just knowing that background could be useful to appreciation of the story in Rebirth. Game's not that long,
yeah,
so I
if
figured
you're concerned about like canon, everyone loves canon. I don't think Reunion is technically canon, but we know that Zach's background is basically that in some form, and he apparently is going to be very somehow present in Rebirth. So
you know what's canon? Dirge of Cerberus. Now that's canon.
It's definitely going to happen.
So I'm only a few hours into Crisis Core Reunion, and Adam was actually watching me stream it. And one of my very first initial impressions, unfortunately not an optimistic one, I'm like, man, this game's kind of ugly. Like even even the all the remastered visuals, it just, I've heard verbally that you can clearly tell that it's based on it's not a remake, it really is a remaster. It's based on the PSP skeleton. And once you actually see it in motion and like actually have to engage with the game like physically, not just watching a trailer, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely feel this.
You can see it in like the animations, especially. You can see it in the animations, especially where it's clearly like canned animations and characters sort of like rotating on their feet.
But the combat is like way better. So I mean,
That's yeah. I guess the moment-to-moment gameplay got a little bit more of a spruce up than the non full motion cutscenes. I guess I'll put it that way. Also, this is not a hot take. This is a very consensus pick, but I'm really struggling with the new English voice cast. It just feels like a step down from the remake cast. I know some people criticize the remake English voice cast as well, but those I never really had an issue with. I enjoy those just fine. I'm struggling a little bit more here. English voice actors tend to grow on me the more time I give them, so I'll see.
I mean, I agree, and I think a lot of people also felt this. Just like Zach's older voice kind of not only seemed to fit him more, but seemed just to be kind of better done overall.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty hard shoe to fill. I mean, I think the original actor is I forgot his name, is Gomez something, but he did a really good job. So it was pretty hard to like outclass him.
Aerith, I don't think you've run into Aerith yet, but she has the same voice as she does in remake, and so does Yuffie not Yuffie. Yuffie's little in this game, but Tifa has the same voice. But the thing is, it's just kind of like, I feel like just probably the English voice production. The fact that you're fitting it over like a PSP game with like stilted animations doesn't help. Probably just not
trying to match very low fidelity lip flaps, things like that. You have to time
it's not as yeah. There are other
like I was gonna say, like in the remake, those two sound excellent, but in the PSP game, I feel it's like the voice direction. It's like trying to tell them it's like emulate the PSP style, so their acting quality kind of goes down because of it or something. I don't know.
Just goes to say that voice direction really matters. You can take a great voice actor and give him bad voice direction, and the result's not good. So I assume we'll hear a similar. So we'll kind of go the other direction with Zach's voice actor, assuming he has a lot more of a prominent role in the Rebirth with the better voice direction. And I guess
I'm going to bounce off of that. Let me bounce off of that. Okay. James, did you finish remake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw James tweet about like Zach, because if you finish intermission, Zach is right there, like he's there.
Yeah, it makes it like it's very funny because I had not played remake at all or intermission until like I finally finished it like this week, and it's so funny seeing people even like now act like, oh, is Zach going to be in Rebirth? Is Zach going to be in? Is he alive? It's like, if you played intermission, it's like, yes, he's alive.
And he barges into the castle or into the church and everything, so he's there.
I feel all these haters that hate Final Fantasy VII Remake just never played it. That's my opinion, because this game is fantastic. I don't know how people can hate this. It's like, if people even gave it a 6 talking in RPG site before, saying it's like, what the hell did they play? If this is a 6, then what the hell is some other stuff? No. Really want to know.
Dragon Quest Adventure of Dai.
Having finished 7 Remake, I'm just gonna say it. I am so glad that Rebirth is coming out next year, because I enjoyed Remake so much more than I enjoyed 16. It's
I'm in the same boat. But if people hated 7 and gave it a 6 in our site, it's like, what is a 16 to them? That's my opinion.
I don't know. Different people like different things.
I know, but I want to know. It's like, what do you see that this game is better?
Well, I reviewed Remake, and it feels like forever ago. I gave it an 8, and a lot of the criticisms were kind of linearity of it, which basically Rebirth seems to kind of address.
Yeah, so you also criticize things that nobody cares about or talks about anymore, like I remember one of the things that you were kind of hung up on was like, I have to go into the sewers again to find that one dude whose name I forget.
I hated that chapter.
You had to find
I still hear about that, and that's fair.
You had to find Leslie's like ring for his unnamed fiance. Just kind of like, this is
basically
that one chapter was the actual filler for the fucking game. It's like,
if that chapter didn't exist, I would have scored it a point higher probably.
I think there's only like 2 chapters I didn't dislike. Hojo's lab, I feel that was way bigger than it needs to be. It's like it's artificially extending the game.
It's sort of like the final dungeon in a way. Because
once
you
you
do the lab,
but it's also like when you think about the structure of it, like it's just like a lot of its structure just feels very. It's like it kind of reminds me of like, you remember Digital Devil Saga 2 when they made the airport a dungeon in that game.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on in this airport?
Well, the thing is I think the framework of Rebirth is a little bit of a more open, wide linear is more conducive to being able to add little bonus dungeons or extra areas. When you're stuck to the more straight line, linear, both path and story of the Midgar section of the game, and then you say, nope, we're going to diversion back to the sewers, fight Apsu again, or whatever. It feels a little bit more contrived. Where if you're out just in the world map and they added, some bonus objectives that didn't exist in the original game, it's a little bit more viable, maybe.
I think that's what makes Rebirth like really interesting. It's like, okay, since you have such a big like playground to like play around in, what does the dungeon design look like in that game? Can it be like more concise now and not feel so bloated for the sake of like, kind of trying to make a mountain out of a molehill almost?
Yeah, but my main my one sentence summary then is I was kind of lukewarm on Remake, hence the 8 out of 10, but I'm really excited for Rebirth all the same because I don't think it'll have those same pitfalls. So Rebirth is definitely you should vote for your most anticipated game on the RPG site.
Now the only thing I'm wondering about is, do I pick it up on PS5 at launch, or do I wait a couple of months for the PC version? Because they keep saying only exclusive through the end of May. And it's using the same engine. It's using a lot of the same framework. Is it possible we also get Rebirth on PC in like June or July?
And also, is it gonna be another thing of like if it's Epic first then Steam, or are they gonna be simultaneous?
Yeah, I think that Square Enix is done with Epic exclusives. At least I hope so.
The reason I feel like they need to move Kingdom Hearts off of Epic now.
I think Kingdom Hearts is a Disney thing and less a Square Enix thing. Like, the thing I always point to is that like Epic actually signed an agreement with Disney for like using Unreal Engine for like CGI in their films. Right. And my assumption is that part of that deal was, hey, can we get Kingdom Hearts on our like PC games storefront? Because that's the only explanation that makes sense, because it's almost been 3 years and it hasn't come off. So, oh wow.
We'll see.
You can't come off Epic until I actually boot them up and play them.
So you're the one holding it up, Brian. Okay, all right.
And that's the fucked up
Kingdom
thing.
Hearts listeners, you know who's responsible now.
And that's the fucked up thing, is that like Kingdom Hearts 3's PC port is actually really fucking good.
Yep.
Yeah, but people just hate dealing with multiple launchers. Okay, I just want to have one thing and just call it a day.
This is really, really dumb, but like I keep getting emails from Amazon. Like, we talked about Cyberpunk over the last, like in September with the 2.0 stuff or whatever. And it's like I have the game on GOG because that's CD Projekt's storefront. But like all of like you can get this whatever skin for like the Steam version of the game, or the Epic version of the game, or this is for the GOG version of the game, or this is for like, and it's just like a mess. And it's all inconsequential stuff that doesn't matter. But it's stuff like that having the different storefronts just really kind of makes a soup to process through, just all the different delivery streams and methods and codes and redeems and things like that. Yeah. But anyways, that kind of covers my kind of smorgasbord of different things that I've played over the last week. So that alongside of Josh's and James' little talks, I think I kind of covered a bunch of different smaller titles used from the back half of the year that we wanted to get to at least get a second look at before going to our last podcast of the year, which we'll record next week. Is there any other game we want to discuss at this time before going on to news?
I think we're good. That's it. That's the
I
last
guess
we'll
it's
ever
just
hear
the
about video
final.
games.
I mean, I have played some other games, but I just didn't put enough time that I could kind of, give it a deep thought. So that's kind of like a problem.
Like I guess
No worries.
since like this is technically our last like normal recording, I'm like thinking like, okay, what are the new releases this month am I gonna get, like besides Dragon Quest Monsters? Like you
The
have
big
the
two are Monsters and Warhammer Rogue Trader. Those are the big, at least for our site's
right,
coverage.
yeah, not FF7 Ever Crisis on Steam. Hmm?
No.
No. All
I
right.
Okay.
wonder if that'll even work on Steam Deck. Probably not.
Well, you can try. I mean, that's what the OLED Steam Deck is for, isn't it?
Specifically the OLED for Ever Crisis.
But yeah, the last thing I played this week was I was playing Pocket Mirror, and I was trying to like get a good idea how does this compare to a little goody two shoes. So, uh,
Will you be the little goody two shoes champion next week? We'll find out.
I'll
I,
try.
Before we go into news, there's a few shout outs. I know I've shouted out a couple times, but yeah, we do have our reader poll active through the month of December. So we'll be having this. If it's not pinned on our Twitter page, it should be. I'll make sure to do that after the podcast. But we'll be retweeting it throughout the month of December. We'll have our reader poll, we'll have access to it. It's basically a Google sheet that you'll vote for your favorite RPG or RPG game that we've covered, RPG adjacent game from 2023, and then your most anticipated game that's currently slated or possibly slated for 2024. Invariably, always some of the things get delayed or pushed out, but it's just our best guess at this time. Adam, I know, spent a lot of time putting that together. So thank you, Adam, for taking the time to do all the logistics for setting that up. If there is a game missing from the list, usually it's inadvertent. It's not us. It's not on purpose. So if you see something that you want to vote for that came out this year that you believe should be on the list, just reply to our socials, and we should be able to get that added for you. Yeah, we do have a couple late reviews for the year that have gone up in the last week. Paige was able to put up a review for Small Saga. So this is a game that, as far as I can tell, we did not cover
Josh talked about
on
it.
the site.
Yeah, I talked about it. The day that it came out, I basically bought and beat it within the same day. I thought it was pretty
Okay.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, so it's pretty brief then.
Yeah, it's like it took me like less than 10 hours, so it's like maybe like
Oh,
six and a
okay.
half hours. Yeah, it's not a long game. It's a cool game,
Gotcha.
but it's
Mhm.
yeah.
I,
Paige
I
and I
think
were talking about it.
I think Paige beat it also in one sitting and just wrote a review because it was so short. Was it?
Yeah, I was technically gonna review, but I was like I got busy with some other stuff, so she's like, "You want me to review it?" I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." I mean, no, I have no plans to like kind of review it immediately. So she
Mhm.
wrote up a fantastic review about it.
So brief little fun experience. It's I recognize the artwork. It's got kind of the over the shoulder kind of Dragon Questy perspective with like a mouse holding a like a
It's
pocket
more
knife
it's more
sword.
like Golden Sun was the
Gold
inspiration for
Sun,
that.
yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I guess I was thinking of Dragon Quest III remake, which were
Hmm.
still kind of
When
a
Dragon
well
Quest III
that has
Remake was shown off, we're like, hey, this looks like Golden Sun.
yeah. The other review that went up on the site, we got a review. This is a little bit delayed, but came out in October. This is Silent Hope. This is the Marvelous RPG that released on PC and Switch. And this is the one that, Josh, you put in like an unreasonable amount of time in the demo. Is that correct? Or is that a different game?
For Silent Hope, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I hear that
I
hey,
don't,
you can get different rare weapons. Like, oh boy.
did
Uh-huh.
you ever actually play the full release, or did you just?
I did. I played the full
Oh,
release.
okay.
I beat it. I beat all of the I beat like one loop of the post game because there's like other like higher difficulties. Like you can play the
Mhm,
entire game plus post game in higher difficulties, but I didn't do that. You could if you want to.
mhm.
But I put a lot of like probably what is my Steam time on? My God, it's like now I'm wondering. Fuck.
I'm
Silent
gonna
Hope
guess 62 hours.
21.3.
Oh, okay.
So it's
All
not
right,
actually that long.
I
Yeah,
shot a
but
little high.
it's a charming game. It's not like
Mhm.
groundbreaking or earth-shattering, but it's a fine game. It's a neat-
Yeah, so Nathan was able to do a formal written review for us on the site, so go ahead and check out his review for Silent Hope. And then Paul, master of the RPG site Op-Ed, wrote up a feature of all games, Quest 64. So, if you are a longtime follower of the site, you do know that we have kind of been a little bit, I don't know what the word is, joking about Quest 64. We've been a little bit like insincere about it, kind of as like in a meme jokey way. We've kind of not done that recently. That was a prior era RPG site, I suppose. But Paul took a more sincere look at the game about how it, its place, as awkward as it is in terms of like RPG history, RPG retro gaming, and I think is advocating for it to be available to play in a modern setting, if not a remake, at least making it available to play on like Nintendo Switch Online, regardless of what you think of the game or how it's received. So just a fun little curious op-ed from Paul up on the site for Quest 64 begging for a second wind.
I think I remember reading game magazines when I was a kid. The hype that was like the greatest thing ever. And you play it's like, man, this game sucks. I'm going back to Final Fantasy VII.
What are you talking about, Chow? It's clearly the best RPG for Nintendo 64.
Mm-hmm.
Is there no RPGs for Nintendo 64? What about Wonder
really
Project?
That's the joke.
Arguably, it's the best RPG ever. Some people say.
Yeah.
I'm putting my vote for Wonder Project J2.
No,
You made that one up.
It sucks compared to Quest 64. Objectively.
Mm-hmm. Flip, go ahead and give those the Small Saga review, the Silent Hope review, and the Quest 64 feature a read on the site. We do have a handful of decently sized announcements here in the last. Now that I'm looking at the news posts, I'm like, man, we're gonna have to like bunch up all the remaining news of the year, and at some point in January, we'll have to like cover it all in a big bunch.
Hey,
But anyways,
I remember like this upcoming week, the Game Awards is happening, and we can't do a podcast on that news because we're recording.
What if Grand Theft Auto 6 is an RPG?
No.
I'm just gonna refuse to cover it.
Okay, I don't want to be the one to cover it. Fuck that.
All right, so starting out with a few announcements. This one, I don't think we had. I was when I read this headline, and I'm kind of coming to these after coming off my vacation, so I did watch all these trailers before the podcast. This is an announcement of a companion game for Penny Blood. So Penny Blood was the kickstarted game that is a spiritual successor to the Shadow Hearts series. That was announced alongside the Wild Arm spiritual successor, which was, what was that? Wild Fantasia.
Arm Fantasia.
Arms Fantasia. Yeah. And then what was announced this week is a companion game called Penny Blood Hellbound. So I remember I read in the Discord, Adam immediately compared this to Aiden Chronicle Rising. Very similar, where it seems like this is a game that is slated to come out within a year, summer 2024, while Penny Blood is being worked on as kind of sort of like an appetizer, so to speak. Only where Aiden Chronicle Rising was kind of like the side-scrolling action RPG. This is more of a roguelike, where when I watched it, it's got the isometric view. It reminds me of something like Hades.
It very much invokes Hades. Like, it's probably an inspiration. Like, even just like the character art is not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not as good as Hades, but it's like, okay, I see the inspiration.
Yeah.
But also, you didn't mention that this is actually developed by the same studio as Aiden Chronicle Rising, Natsume Atari.
That's kind of a fun niche to be in, though. Like, I don't know if you just
we are now developing companion games, I guess.
If you see someone else's IP that you think you can do like an interesting twist on, like, hey, here's our idea. They kind of pilot that, and then if that's a viable for them, that's kind of an interesting kind of little niche to be in. I don't know.
I guess there's gonna be access on there's gonna be a closed beta on this, like starting up very soon on December 14th for I guess a certain backer tier, or something like that. So,
Yeah. So there's if you go to the news post, there's like a timeline, like a roadmap. Mm-hmm. There's basically a beta for backers like next week or 2 weeks from now, And then there's going to be an early access release that you can buy, like in February. And then in summer next year, it'll be the full release. That's their plan.
It feels like ancient history, but did Aiden Chronicle Rising do that, or was that just a straight release?
Just released.
Okay, all right. And then I don't know if people who are excited for Penny Blood are interested in. That's one of those things where they take this IP, which is kind of based on another IP, and then they kind of change the genre.
I think if people just want to get to see the characters and kind of see a little bit of the world.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. Yeah, when I backed this Kickstarter, but I'm not one of those people who has my eyes glued to all the updates and every single little character reveal or location reveal or concept art. No, I'll just back it. I'm interested in this game. I played the Shadowheart series, and then let me know when it's about to come out, right? So I don't know anything about the game other than the main character is named Matthew, and I guess there's another group called the Hellhounds, and this game, this new game, Hellbound, is about the Hellhounds. So it's oh, okay, I guess I may play this game and maybe get introduced to some of these characters that will probably show up in Penny Blood, right? I mean, kind of the same thing with
It's a more organic way to learn them rather than just drilling through press releases.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than just reading a description on a Kickstarter update.
I guess it's also important. At the end of the day, it's not really taking away resources from the main development team doing this as well, because it's a whole separate development studio working on this. It's not taking away from the actual main development of Penny Blood.
I was gonna ask, when you play Eiyuden Chronicle, what was your approach with the game? Because you're playing a spin-off of a game that hasn't come out yet. So what was the approach? You go in there.
I played it like another video game and had no expectations, just kind of just enjoyed it for what it is.
Yeah, so I reviewed Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. I don't think it's a great game, but I was a bit lenient on it. I gave it a 7. You could have argued, nah, it's actually a 6 or whatever. But my thought was, this is a $15 companion game from a side studio, not a full price release. This isn't the main course. It's just kind of meant to be a teaser. It introduced me to several of the characters that will show up in the main game. And, I'm interested to see what CJ and Isha and whoever, Guru and all these characters, I'm interested to see them now in the main game. And, how do they contribute? Yeah. Because I played Rising. And that's kind of the whole point.
But they showed artwork for the main 3 from Rising into the main. It's holy shit! Look how look at that, how they updated their designs.
Why is CJ wearing a suit now?
Yeah,
looks good. Exactly. That's not what I expected.
I me not have some a little form of emotional investment in those characters now because of Rising.
What's the name of the magical girl? I forget. But I want to see the magical girl.
Right? Oh wait, no, the oh yeah, that's right. What was her name? Shit.
Marionette.
I don't know. I don't remember.
This is gonna bug me.
She had a funny role in Rising because she was a runaway.
Melor?
Yeah,
that sounds right.
I remember it started with an M. Marion?
I actually wrote this down somewhere. They said there's going to be 7 characters from Rising that'll be playable in Eiyuden Chronicles. Oh, here it is. Probably these are the characters besides Isha, CJ, and Guru that'll probably show up in Eiyuden Chronicle Rising. Hogan, Ayugo, Malor, Gokto, Frida, Hurstwine, and Squash. Those characters.
Squash.
I know one of those is the alligator.
He's the bird. Hogan's the alligator.
Yep. But yeah, so you can take that and take a similar kind of mindset with Penny Blood Hellbound. For into the main game there.
Yeah, unlike Rising, like we mentioned, this update roadmap, they actually add substantial things throughout this development. They're adding voice acting, they're adding obviously more content, more playable characters, but they're also adding online multiplayer launching for its official release as well. So it's the scope of this project seems like it's going to be way more. It seems to be a way bigger scope than what Rising was. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out.
The other game that was kind of re-announced in the last week is a game called Unforetold Witchstone. Now, this is not a brand new announcement. This is a game that's actually been in development quite a while under the tentative title Project Witchstone from back in the 2019 timeframe. And this is a game that actually has been present before the pandemic timeframe. at it was either PAX or another one of those kind of like EGX type expos, and I was actually able to go hands on with it. It feels like an ancient time, 4 years ago or so. And then I had kind of forgotten it. They had initially planned to release Project Witchstone in like 2020, 2021, but of course, everyone's plans got upended there. And so now the developer Spearhead Games has announced that Unforetold Witchstone will launch for early access on January 25th of next year, 2024. So it's kind of the way I would describe this is it's like a CRPG. When I played it, it reminded me a lot of the Divinity games in terms of Original Sin, Original Sin 2, in terms of the camera perspective, how the turn-based combat works, how like the interacting with the field works. But with a higher influence on what they call reactive influence in terms of like choice and consequence, whatever you want to, buzzword you want to call it for an RPG system. And it's got more of a kind of a primary colored art style. It's a little bit like got bold, bright colors, and a little bit more like retro stylings to it, even though it's got the full HD resolution to it. So they announced the early access release in January, along with the press release and a new trailer and a bunch of new art, new logo for the new title, some UI elements and things like that. So I'm not sure I am super gelling with like what they're showing in terms of the art or the theme, but I do know from when I went hands on, I really enjoyed the gameplay that they showed like 5 years ago at this point. So I'm eager to see like I'm glad this game didn't become vaporware, and it took them longer than they planned, but it was able to get our hands on it within a year. Now that they've gotten it to a playable state that they're willing to release on early access, so excited to see how this goes, and I hope it's something that's going to be successful for them because I'm glad they're able to survive the struggles of the pandemic in terms of
Yeah,
being a small development studio on
right.
what I believe is their debut game.
My takeaway from it was it's definitely your traditional CRPG, but you're rolling for initiative.
Wait. We're
rolls,
talking about Unforetold?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's not their debut game. They made Omen Sight
Oh,
and
it's not theirs.
they made Stories the Path of
Mm,
Destiny.
Okay.
So
All right. I've heard
yeah.
of Omen Sight. I haven't heard of the other one. So never mind. But
Yeah.
Zach
still,
reviewed it.
Zach did.
On our site.
I wasn't here yet. That's my excuse.
uh, but all I know is there's a CRPG that has dinosaurs in it, and that's cool. Yeah, if you have dinosaurs in your game, it's usually a plus.
Sorry for forgetting about this review that was written in April 2016.
I'm
But
looking through the artwork, and one of the artwork looks like a triceratops with like a pig head and a pig nose, and like a turtle shell on its back. It's
I feel
so
like I
weird.
explained the art style kind of poorly, but it's like high resolution, low poly. I don't know how you like talk about how you describe that, but we'll have the
Another
trailer
one,
up on the site.
another one of the artwork is like it's like a train, but it looks like a jet and has like a magic sigil at like popping out of it from the top. It looks fucking weird. I don't know. You have to
Mhm.
go check the news post, look at the artwork. I sound like a crazy person.
Well, maybe we'll put it in the thumbnail. Maybe not. We'll see. So here's something that we kind of knew was happening, and this is none of this information is quite a surprise, but we had the Level-5 Vision 2023 2 live stream event, which is talking about kind of the bundle of Level-5 games that were all kind of announced in a group earlier in the year, all or most initially slated for 2023. We were expecting that they were going to get delayed. We kind of got that information this last week. So Level-5 had new trailers for a lot of their games. I'll just kind of go them in order. So these are all kind of bundled in a combo news post up on the site about the Vision 2023 2 event. So Fantasy Life: The Girl Who Steals Time was officially delayed to summer 2024 alongside a new trailer. Megaton Musashi Wired was the only one of the set that got a specific release date for the next year. So that one, and that's the kind of the re-release, like I don't know what you call that, upport of the original Megaton Musashi before a global release this time, with some extra content. Is going to be coming out on April 25th, 2024. Inazuma 11 Victory Road was just slated for generic 2024. For PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and mobile devices, there is some rumors about an investor call that implied that Inazuma 11 might be coming to Steam, but as far as I can tell, not officially announced.
The website doesn't mention it. Trailers don't mention it. So it's like maybe it's coming later or something. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, but slated for 2024. And then DecaPolice was the one that was also delayed into 2024 or later. Did not get a new trailer. All the other ones I mentioned did get some new footage. But DecaPolice was just slated to say, hey, it's still coming out on PS4, PS5, and Nintendo Switch for 2024 or later. So I don't think anything here other than the Megaton Musashi Wired release date that was surprising. But of course, having the new footage is nice to have. We have all these trailers kind of bundled together up on the site if you just want to see what some more of the preview gameplay looks like.
Dang, nice vision. That's okay. That's crazy, right? Because they had their Vision 2023, the first event, like somewhere between February or March this year. It's like, this is the year of level 5. We're fucking nailing it. We're gonna release all these bangers. Fuck you. Then here we are, December or whatever, or the end of November when this. Here's our second Vision 2023 event. We've never done a sequel to a Vision in the same year, but here we are, and our vision is we're delaying everything.
It is funny. It's also sad, but also it's like, again, as the only person in this call that's played most of these games, at least like during TGS, it's like, I have confidence that when these release, they're gonna be good.
Hopefully, so, I don't want any of them to be bad.
Yeah, and we're not laughing at like how dare they delay these. It's just more it's more circumstantial, or more just like the fact that they're kind of having this new like framework for showing their games and then kind of bundling them all together in this way. Now they're all coming this year. Oh wait, they're all coming next year. So more the circumstance.
I'll just say this: DecaPolice, if it is coming out next year, please be late next year. Early next year is too fucking crowded.
I feel like if it comes out next year, it will be late next year. So I think we're good.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if Level 5 themselves said like, yeah, this is the year of Level 5. Man.
Yeah, they did, because it's also, I believe, the 25th anniversary of the company or something. Or is it the 30th? I know it's a big...
I think it's the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, because I know when I had my appointment with them at TGS, I got a grab bag of stuff, and one of the things they had was this like booklet going really in. Honestly, I should take pictures of it and put it on Twitter. But like, it was a booklet of like all this, like the company's history, going over some of the stuff, like everything they made, and also like talking about the games that they're working on. I need to find that. 1 second. God. It's like.
It's definitely the year of Level 5 delayed.
So if I say I'm gonna play, like, I am kind of, all of these would kind of be like outside my normal like bubble. If I should play one of these, I'm leaning towards either DecaPolice or Megaton Musashi.
I think you would probably like DecaPolice more than Megaton Musashi, because Megaton Musashi it's like more of a simplistic. You need to really have, like, I guess, a passion for like the whole building robots aspect, which seems to like lean a lot on. It's like it seems like the action combat is more on the simplistic side, but you kind of just like it's stage based, right? It's not like your typical like RPG flow, which seems like DecaPolice is going.
So they don't have Professor Layton listed here for next year, is it?
No, because Layton isn't an RPG. That's why we didn't.
Oh, but I just want to know: is it like
it's
still coming next year?
Yeah, that's 2025.
Oh, damn! That's longer than I thought.
Yeah, it's
I think that was the one that was furthest out of their set.
I think out of all these, like, obviously DecaPolice is definitely super interesting, but I think Inazuma 11 as well seems to be like a very like an almost like it's the next big Inazuma 11, but it's like almost a celebration title as well. So
how many characters are playable?
I know it's like a lot of like, I guess, DLC or expansions or whatever that will add like.
So you're not going to believe this
from every Inazuma 11. It's like it seems very crazy and very.
So I found the book. Crazy. You're not going to believe this, but I apparently there was already some concept art for the new Layton, along with like a picture from like a CG like in development, like in the book that I got.
Tokyo Game Show.
Yeah. It's like I'm looking through it and it's like I should probably take a closer look at this because there might be some information about the games that nobody else has noticed yet. Because as far as I can tell, you only got this at TGS.
I very undershot my guess. I was like, how many characters? Like 300? No, 4,500, 4,500.
Yeah.
And Inazuma 11.
Well, I will give Inazuma 11 Victory Road a shot because it seems crazy what they're doing with it.
Super ambitious, yeah.
Yeah, like, and, you know, I've always wanted to try the Inazuma 11 series because it is basically soccer or football proper. An RPG.
So we're Americans, most of us. I was writing this news
site
post.
is owned by in UK, isn't it?
Yes, our official address is in the UK.
So,
anyways, I was writing up this news post on this site. I made a joke about it. I called it a football RPG. And as an American, it just like you're in pain as you're typing that. Like,
it's not football, really, though.
Yeah, like, you know, being Chinese myself, when I first moved to Canada, my dad loves soccer. But I said, let's watch football. That's what it says on TV. And he watches, like, what the fuck is this crap?
That's always the funny thing about Spanish, where, like, you know, soccer is football, FUTBOL, and then they call, like, proper, like, you know, United States football as football Americano. There. Great.
Yeah, a lot of these games look very interesting in one way or the other. Because I know even Fantasy Life is, you know, it's targeted specifically for that Switch audience. It's a Switch exclusive, right? That's what I had listed here in my notes and hasn't been announced for anything else. But it seems like definitely it's sort of game that could be very successful in that market.
We talked about it before. There are a lot of Fantasy Life fans. And we have to apologize to them each time we talk about it because we're just not very
one of those
well
like sneaky big fan bases that are very passionate and are very excited about getting a release date for that. And that one they did say summer, so hopefully that will be the next one that they.
I'll give it a shot because I needed something to scratch my Rune Factory itch. You know.
Yeah, because it's kind of like Rune Factory adjacent. There you go.
There are 2 new Rune Factory games in development. Who knows?
Will they come out in 2024 though? That's the question.
We have more of our release dates later in the podcast, but I put this one up front because it's a little bit more of a, I guess, marquee or big entry. And this is a release date and new main trailer for Dragon's Dogma 2. It leaked on Steam right before the official announcement, like a day or so before. But Dragon's Dogma 2 will be releasing on March 22nd, 2024, alongside the announcement of the release date. Capcom released a new, basically, main trailer. So it's a pretty lengthy trailer that covers a lot of both gameplay and story, even though a lot of the story elements are just kind of like cutscenes that are snipped together. So I don't know if you can really like follow a through line for them, but it does show plenty of gameplay, a lot of, you know, exactly what you want to expect from Dragon's Dogma, a lot of big monsters, a lot of really fancy spell effects, a lot of fairly wide open, you know, exploratory areas, a lot of new art and things like that. So it makes me really excited for this game. We also got a lot of new screenshots showing like how the pawn system. We got some more information that's a little bit of repeat from kind of when the game was announced about how this game takes place across 2 nations, the human nation and the beast ren nation. The pawn systems returning, some of the different classes like tricksters and some of the returning classes like magic archers. So
yeah, they showed off the new trickster vocation here, and it looks freaking awesome. It like your main weapon. It's like sort of like lantern, I believe, and it's like it focuses on like creating illusions. So it's almost like a quasi summoner class with illusions. Really interesting to confuse enemies. They also mentioned more in depth about the story. Like in the first game, it was pretty straightforward. The premise, like and just like in this game, you take the role as an arisen. Grigori is back. Steals the heart of what would become the arisen. And you have, you know, pawns under your control as being the arisen. Now in this game, compared to the first game, like in the first game was a very kind of almost one-dimensional relationship between pawns and the arisen because you had the nation of Grand Soren as like kind of your main hub and kind of the main hub for civilization as you know it. in the first Dragon's Dogma game. While in this one, the nation of humans and Beastren, one nation is sort of favors and looks upon like the pawns that arisen. They have a positive impression of them, while the other nation has a negative impression of them. And you also have now elves into adding elves into the mix. The main story trailer shows the existence of elves. They communicate with you through their own language, so you can't actually decipher what they're saying. It's like kind of sort of like an elven language that you don't know exactly. It's almost like a made up language based on how they're saying it. But your pawns can learn a specialty to actually translate it for you. So there's actually pawn specializations, and one of them is elven language specialization. You can actually teach pawns to interpret the language. So that just really opens up like what other pawn specializations are in store if it gets that specific in engaging with the world.
So
really interesting.
I'm very interested in this game, and I haven't played the original. So that just means I should watch the anime, right?
That's right. There you go.
Totally forgot that existed. I play a bit of the original. I
actually do plan on playing this in January, because January is sort of a light month for me. Before I'm not caught up to date on Like a Dragon.
I would actually say that 2 might be similar enough to the first game that I would say if you can squeeze it in December.
No. I'd say you still play the first one. To be honest, I mean you don't have to play the first one. I'm not saying skip it.
Yeah, I'm not saying skip it. I'm saying if you can squeeze it in December to give it a little bit more room from 2, I would maybe recommend it.
Yeah, but after our Game of the Year podcast, I want to play some stuff that we can talk about then.
Makes sense, yeah.
Right.
I mean, this looks like I'm always impressed every time they show this game. The quality of like the technical aspects, the amount of animation work and physics going on in this. It looks really cool. I mean, March 22nd is actually a pretty good time because you have March 8th is Unicorn Overlord, and it is assuming that like you get some buffer time in between because you're probably gonna want to work on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
But another Megaton RPG lands on March 22nd.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Definitely. For sure.
What? What's the Megaton RPG?
We haven't talked about it yet. I think it was on our list here, but I'll jump ahead.
Yeah, it's near the end.
The Legend of Legacy HD Remastered.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'll tell you an odd secret. So I was asked to work on Alliance Alive guide in 2019, and I sort of dropped the project at like chapter 8-ish around because I had to do Cold Steel guides, and for some stupid reason I decided to update my Alliance Alive guide 4 years later. I wonder what those people will think. They're so bad that this guide was never finished.
Oh man. But hey, at least it's not Legend of Legacy, I mean, Legend of Legacy is like it's a weird place and time to like re-release this game because you're re-releasing it after Alliance Alive. I think that's sort of where the main rub is. It's like
I think Legend of Legacy is pretty. I think Legend of Legacy is okay, but I think what people really need to know is there's practically no story, none.
Yeah,
like literally, you get like 2 sentences, and then it's just battle and exploration. And I think its systems are fine. I don't think they're good enough that you can basically omit everything else. I'm more of a
like whenever like people say like if people were to say Legend of Legacy or Alliance Alive, I would always go with Alliance Alive because
it's pretty much the same gameplay.
Yeah,
with story.
Pretty much, Alliance Alive is pretty much a much more refined version of Legend of Legacy that was a direct response to people's issues with Legend of Legacy. So like if you're looking for like a prototype version of Alliance Alive, and this is like a curiosity pickup, I guess, but it's a very weird project. I'm all for it in the sense of like game preservation, having a modern release of it, making it available.
It's so weird. It's like, why now? They should have released this first instead of Alliance Alive.
But then that's also a weird thing. Is it's like now it'd be complaints like, where the fuck is Alliance Alive? We're tired of Legend of Legacy here for years.
Don't worry, maybe I pulled the same boat by delaying my Alliance Alive guide for like 4 years. I finally got nothing on my plate, so maybe I can work on it.
I mean, God bless the people who are getting Legend of Legacy on release March 22nd.
We also have some new details about the upcoming Hoyoverse game, Zenless Zone Zero. This is the kind of the urban retro future RPG that was announced, I think, back in 2022, or was it older than that? Yeah, 2022. It's in its second closed beta. And this is actually something that Josh Tolentino from RPG Site was able to get access to. So he actually wrote up a pretty lengthy, very thorough preview of the new beta. And then in addition to that, we got some new character trailers for the initial trio of characters called the Cunning Hares. So if you've seen any of the footage or screen caps, these are probably like the three most primarily featured characters. You've got Billy Kid in the red jacket. You've got Anby, who's got like the headphones and the green jacket, and then you've got Nicole, who has like the pink hair and the black ribbon pigtails. But yeah, so I haven't really been following the reception of this beta, but I kind of get the vibe that it hasn't been well received for multiple different reasons, both for gameplay and for accusations of censorship based on the initial reveal versus what we got now. And then also just when I looked at Josh Tolentino's preview of the game, a lot of the gameplay comparisons seem to not be to Genshin or to Star Rail, but rather to Honkai Impact Third, which I guess is a more of an acquired taste, but I can't really speak to that. So I don't know. I know, Chow, you seemed like you had some impressions about Zone Zero, even though you haven't gotten into the beta.
My impression of the game is, I don't know, people seem very divisive about it because the UI is very clunky. It looks like someone made a Pinterest post and it'll be all the shit clutter in your screen. And then the only way that you would know that which one's a side quest is like you look at the blue text out of all the Pinterest thing that's thrown on your screen. It's like the UI is just a mess, but it's like try to be all stylish and stuff, you know. It's like, but as a gameplay wise, like it's not intuitive, you know. And
So I guess like the problems are twofold, right? Like first, before we get into the censorship stuff, like gameplay wise, like the impression that I get is just that it feels boneless because it feels like you're just kind of wailing on enemies, and like each of your individual hits don't really do much damage, and you're only really putting in combos and hits to like fill up this daze meter, in which you're actually gonna get damage when they're stunned and needs limits and chain attacks and so forth. But it feels like it feels like your basic main attack strings are all in service of just not damaging the enemy, but kind of doing minuscule damage to fill up this meter, and which you'll be able to do real damage to enemies, which, in my experience from other action games, just doesn't feel good. In my opinion, I feel like I'm just kind of all my attacks feel borderline meaningless in service of like filling up an arbitrary thing in which I actually get to play the game. Almost, that doesn't feel great. Um, so I can see why people have issues with that aspect of it, and also it's just like another aspect of it's like there's like just no sense of like team building or team synergy because your characters can just be your other characters are mainly used for like a parry mechanic to swap to them, but there's not really some sort of like what am I building this team towards? Is it like for a specific goal, or it's just because I just need to have filler characters in there to
they want to have cooler numbers. That's the traditional gacha thing to aim for, isn't it?
So it's kind of an interesting. And I've also heard like people say like, yeah, like I've kind of just not. I just kind of stopped playing the main game, just like played the mini games, like the snake mini game. I played.
Yeah, like every content creator I see just got bored of the gameplay. They feel it's spamless, or just keep spamming shit. It's so easy to the point you can just spam those buttons, and and you're done. But if they're not interested in the game itself, it's like I don't think that's a good sign. But I hear China is very receptive of this game. They love this beta. So if they're happy about it, that means there might be no change to the overall game because people from the Western side, they were hoping, some changes to the gameplay to improve it, But if they're open to it,
like I don't know, like is it too late to like make changes? And also, if not, what kinds of changes would you make to this to really?
Obviously, they'll make it a little different. I think one of the problems that they complain about is like a lot of the characters, their ultimates all feel the same, and they don't really have their own unique identity.
Okay.
That's one of the things. And there's this also other thing where the whole entire world, you have to explore these things called hollows. It's like this TV world, and it kind of ruins the momentum of the game.
Okay.
And that becomes like a core aspect of it. But like it's like it feels like this game is so deep now. It's like I don't think they're going to make any major changes. And if one side of your audience is just so happy with the game, and the other isn't, but what are they going to do? Just cater to the majority and just forget about the West? Would this game be like dead on arrival for the West and group Bacon China or something? I don't know. I just don't know where this game's headed to. It seems really weird.
Yeah, like I don't like the trifecta of like MiHoYo closed betas between Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero. I feel like this has been the most divisive out of those closed betas. Like Genshin and Honkai Star Rail feel comparatively there were issues with the gameplay itself, but not as much as this. I feel
like I know people complain about Honkai Star Rail being too simple. Like when they were playing the beta, it's like, oh yeah, you only got 2 skills. That's it. And yeah, it does sound simple on paper, but gameplay wise, there's actually a lot of mechanics you could do. It's kind of like playing. You had to know how to adjust your speed and turn order later on if you want to clear some of the difficult bosses, right? And that became like a real kind of like IQ Fury crafting, like with like stat management, which you really didn't get a good look at the beta because you didn't really get enough tools to play around, right?
I wonder if similar situations like is it just we're just too early into like the actual meat of the game to understand like what MiHoYo wants to do with this game. Who knows?
Yeah, but like I'm not totally interested in it. I think, like in my opinion, I think having just one gacha game is already too many. That's me. So
yeah, and, you're not wrong. Plus like Project Mugen is trying to like it's probably that project is probably this game's direct competitor. And that seems to be shaping up. Let's see what happens like in between like closed betas and up to release. But there's also like other all sorts of like action games that serve as a direct competitor as well. Like I forgot the name of the game, the one that me and Josh too looked at, like the one that looked like Warframe. What was it called? Fuck, I forgot.
fuck.
Was it?
Yeah, I forgot. You linked me the trailer to it. It looks cool.
Yeah. Like that looks cool too. So I mean, it's just the market keeps on getting more and more crowded over time.
Like for gacha games, it has to be super good before I play it, especially when it comes from MiHoYo, because they're one of the stingiest like games when it comes to gacha games.
And it feels like we're in the middle of like this whole wave change in that landscape with a lot of like older of those mobile gacha games shutting down. But like between like we're gonna get into it. Oh, like the Cydia Opera Omnia closing down at the end of February, both Japanese and global servers.
Hey, it lasted 7 years, is it?
7 years, yeah. Yeah, I think it's
that's very good. No, most games don't last more than 3. So
yeah. You also have the long-running Symphogear mobile game closing down. And I think there's like a few others as well that announced for end of service as well. But you just see this wave change of like, hey, these older games they just can't compete anymore, and to be competitive now in this market, you have to sort of go along the lines of like what MiHoYo is doing because that's where the money is. That's where it's making bank, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm definitely not happy for it. But there's also one thing I forgot to mention about this game is that if copies Honkai Impact's third's questing system where it costs us stamina to do the main story and stamina to do side quests.
Josh brought that up in his review, Tolentino.
Like I thought, maybe they abandoned the system because they abandoned that in Genshin and Honkai, but it seems like we're going backwards again.
So someone who's not played any of these, I have to wonder, maybe this is a dumb question, call me out if it is, but at one point, MiHoYo is going to like cannibalize their own audience, right? Because Honkai Impact 3 still gets updates too, right? It's just not worldwide, and then Genshin and Star Rail are worldwide, and now Zenless Zone Zero doesn't have a release date yet, but I imagine there's a lot of audience crossover. people only have so much, bandwidth for these sorts of games, right? I feel like eventually it's going to be overserved in a way.
Apparently, like already there's data that suggests that like Honkai Star Rail did not increase the amount of money going into Hoyoverse, because while it's been very successful on its own, at the same time, Genshin has had a noticeable decline. And we don't know if that's necessarily because of Star Rail, but as of right now, we can't disprove that people moved over from Genshin to Star Rail. Like, I mean, we have one data point right here, Chow. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I basically focused that as my main gacha game instead of Genshin. That's for me. But the thing is,
you're not going to go over to Zenless.
But my friend is like basically saying it's like at the end of the day, your wallet still ends up in MiHoYo's pockets. So what's the damage then? I guess that's kind of like how it goes.
Yeah, that's true. Like, there's still, like, regardless of even if Genshin's seen a dip, it's kind of like when World of Warcraft went from like 10 million active to like 6 million active. It's like they still have 6 million active subscribers. I saw some people trying to estimate Genshin numbers, but it's really hard because you have to speculate and estimate a lot. Something like how at the peak it might have had 8 million, and now it's down to 4. But then you offset that with how many people are now buying into Star Rail, sort of thing, where it's really hard to kind of predict exactly what went where and trace and who are newcomers or who's just transferred over, and nothing really concrete. So you don't want to treat any of it as gospel.
But yeah, I think it's just becomes a weirder market because it's no longer Japan's no longer like the dominant nation in terms of like this mobile gacha space. Like two of the top like highest selling mobile gacha games in Japan are not from Japanese developers. It's like Nikkei and Blue Archive, and those are both Korean developed. So it just and it's just very weird. Like at some point, I feel like there's a breaking point very soon, but I don't know how that's gonna pan out. So hard to compete anymore. If you're not raking in millions or have this momentum like those games do, then what do you do?
But being an optimist, so this game doesn't even have a release window yet. I don't think they even said 2024. So hopefully people's concerns with the gameplay feeling like spammy or not feeling like weighty is something that they can address before full release.
Like I think the worst part about that feedback that they're asking from the players, they're too hard on the censorship and forgot about the game. It's like I feel like that the opinion's too clouded on that. It's like the game has issues. I think you should focus on the game first instead of the censorship. You get the game fixed.
So lay it to me straight. What is the censorship? So one of the main characters, Nicole, is very fan servicey, and that's fine. It is what it is. And
just
based on
boob size nerves. Just a simple.
Oh, really?
It's
okay,
the usual.
that's pretty straightforward. Okay.
Yeah, it's not the first time for like MiHoYo games. Like up to closed beta to full release, and even some like post release patches. They've definitely updated character designs to make proportions like less.
Obviously, I wish the game is not censored, but still, it's just like there's bigger issues with this game than the moves, right?
and also like they have whether you like it or not, they have to comply with whatever laws that the Chinese government might be about, might influence on the game design as well. Like you can't, like at the end of the day, ideally they wouldn't be censored at all. But when it comes to the government kind of knocking on your door about it, it's like, well, what do you want us to do?
I bet they wouldn't complain if they made her boobs bigger, though.
Yeah. But like,
I just consider it just adjustment of a character design, really.
Pretty much, yeah, me too.
Like they could change arm length, hair length, whatever. Like,
yeah,
I feel like seeing it there, but like in China, it's like it takes a year to get your game approved by like the Chinese government. So you want to like make sure you pass in flying colors, because if it takes a year, if it gets not approved because of simple boob size, and you have to wait a year to get your game on release, it's like, what would you cater to? It's like gotta comply with them. So sadly, that's just how it works.
Well, I'm great we talked about this for another MiHoYo game, because I'm sure when they announce the next MiHoYo game, we're probably gonna say be having the same conversations. Do you think MiHoYo will ever, like, I don't know, like, make something that's like maybe console PC single player first, like an actual?
Never.
No, because these make more money.
Yeah.
Look, they basically stole the entire Trails combat system, and Falcom was barely breaking even, and these guys make thousands of times for them.
It's not the Trails combat system, Chow.
Highly inspired. How's that?
No, but I mean, like, it's not the reason they're making bank, right? It's not the Trails combat system.
No, but I'm just saying, it's like they kind of take a lot of ideas from it. It's like the copycats are the one that's getting rich. You know, that's how I look at it. So it's like, why would
that's a really cynical way to look at it.
It's like, why would I switch? It's like, why would they switch to, you know, the buy one and get it all? They're never going to do that. They make too much money, and people all care about profit first. So that's
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool that Cygames is like making like also like some real video games instead of just the mobile gacha ones they've been doing up until this point. So
I'll be honest, like I'm buying like a relink almost just out of like to send a message.
Respect.
Yeah, it's like I'm never going to engage with your mobile games, especially after Dragalia Lost went down. But if you make an actual console game, I'll buy it, and I'll tell people to buy it because Relink looks dope. What I played of it at Anime Expo was dope. It's like, yeah.
Even the fighting game is dope.
Are you gonna get Rising, Chow?
Yeah. I need to get the Grand Blue stuff too.
Oh, that's right. Of course you're gonna fucking get Rising because
no, but like recently in the mobile game, they've been pissing people off straight.
Did you guys see that they're having Uma Musume like lobby avatars in
Yeah,
Rising?
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that news. That's funny.
They even added Lucius as the DLC boss. He's voiced by Sean Chiplock for the English version.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
He was like the hardest boss in Grand Blue for a good 3 years, you know. But now he's here as the most wanted character at one point.
One of the last couple of sort of modern updates for release games is we got one for Cyberpunk and one for Baldur's Gate. So CD Projekt had a what they call like a red stream update in the last week talking about Cyberpunk version 2.1. So this is basically a update that introduces, I guess, something that was kind of scrapped early in development that people who have been following the game back from like 2013, 2014 era were interested in. And to me, it doesn't seem like that at all exciting, but I've seen some social media reaction to this that have been really excited. But the intro of a metro system, like you could like ride the subway across the city. I don't know if that's all that exciting, but I guess they got it released into the game.
I follow the quest designer, Patrick Kernigan, I think is his name.
Oh, I've interviewed him.
Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah,
and he was just kind of jokingly, once they released this update, he's like, there it is. We released it. Stop asking for it. Kind of jokingly, like.
So. And Josh did most of the work, but I helped a little bit with catching up on all of our like Cyberpunk kind of guide content because 2.0 added a lot of weapons and cars, and like now this is gonna have more cars, and we're like, no, stop adding cars to the game. So yeah, this seems like more of a minor update, but clearly, basically, what they contain within update 2.1 is maybe not that consequential, but it shows that they're going to continue to poke and prod and add and modify the game. No game is ever truly finished nowadays, it feels like. So not as big as a 2.0 or the Phantom Liberty update, but some things that people who have been following the game for a while have been excited for. And then also the CD Projekt announced that the Phantom Liberty expansion has sold over 4 million copies. So still doing very well for them.
Yeah.
Which 4.3 million is really impressive considering the fact they're saying it's a 20% attach rate, but that's not taking into account the fact that this was current gen only. So are they accounting the attach rate for only the current generation version? It doesn't seem like that based off of the numbers we have for the main game sales. So, yeah.
Now that you pointed out, that is something that you don't normally see. Like on their artwork, they say 4.3 million copies, 20% attach rate. And usually they do report attach rate, but it's not usually quite up front and center as it is here. It's
well,
like,
that's actually kind of an
different.
interesting thing about CD Projekt is that they have their investor relations website and pages and press releases and all that. And then they have their Twitter account that is more just like a public facing version of it. And they do those infographics and whatnot. Not just for investors, but clearly for fans too. So, you know, it's just sort of interesting that they basically take stuff that's usually for like boardrooms and like, here it is for the public, you know,
they commercialize it a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah. And then for we kind of got like a similar update for Baldur's Gate 3. They call it Patch 5, where it does some usual like buffing out of some earlier bugs and a few other quality of life things. But the main thing is that they added like a lot more epilogue feature. They say like about 3,500 lines of dialogue for like an additional epilogue scene. That's supposed to be kind of like taking. I remember when Baldur's Gate 3, when you and I had finished the game, we had said that the one of the game's strength wasn't really its story and that it ended kind of abruptly. And they already kind of touched on the ending a little bit already with Karlach and stuff. Yeah. And now they're adding more epilogue scenes, like significantly more, that are supposed to be more comprehensive about like the choices you make and things like that, and characters you've either assisted or not assisted. And to me, what like I said, like that's well and good. I'm not really interested enough to like, oh yeah, let me reboot my save and see what the epilogue is. But it does make me wonder, like Baldur's Gate 3 was, in most respects, pretty well received, despite people kind of agreeing that last it clearly came in very hot. And they've, especially in Act 3, they've had to like really kind of, I kind of think of like Wallace and Gromit putting the tracks down as he's on the train cart for the last act. Like they're trying to like, they got the game released and now they're trying to do what they initially envisioned for the ending of the game. And I was just trying to think, and I don't have an answer to this. Like, what did Larian do right or wrong so that they were able to kind of do this without a lot of scrutiny? And I'm not saying they should be scrutinized. It's just kind of interesting because I feel like if this was another developer, if this was like Bethesda, I feel like you would have been like really a little bit more critical of it. But with Larian, you're not, and I was just trying to musing to myself like why that is. Probably because of the rest of the package was so well put together, and it didn't feel like it was shortchanged until the very end. I'm not sure, but there might be an op-ed like floating around in some of those thoughts. Because obviously, I'm glad that they're still kind of finding weaknesses, that they still have the initiative and the drive to touch up and kind of more realize what they envisioned it should be. But the game was released, months ago. So it's kind of an interesting little place that they're in. But I might follow some other people and see like what these sort of epilogue scenes might consist of, and see if they kind of help round out what was one of the kind of the weaker constituents of the game. Though I would argue that Baldur's Gate 3 is a great game, kind of story notwithstanding, like regardless of how the game starts or ends.
They also addressed why Act 3 had so many slowdown issues for so many people.
Yeah, and it's a strange reason.
Yeah, like it was basically every time you did like a sinful act in the game. I a Reddit post fucking explained this, and I can't remember exactly how they explained it, but basically the game kept note of like how many like quote unquote bad, morally bad acts or actions you did, and that would like basically clog some sort of like back end on the game itself, and it would all come into fruition into like Act 3, where like if you did so many like bad deeds, whether it was like stealing or so forth, acts of theft, the something would happen in the back end in Act 3, which it would come into fruition, which would clog and slow down performance.
So let's say if you never did a bad sin, then it would not clog the game.
Yeah, people who had like a more honorable playthrough had a better performance in Act 3.
They're like, works on my machine.
Act 3.
There's a similar. I was gonna say there's a similar bug in. There's a similar bug in Grand Blue one time in the mobile game, where if you did every single quest of that achievement chart, there will be instant loading for that area. But if you did not, it will check in the game to see if you did all the quests. And it'll take like an extra 10 seconds to load, or something like that. It took a while.
I brought this up on the podcast before, but Pillars of Eternity Deadfire would slow down the more save files you had.
Okay,
Not,
okay, yeah, I found the Reddit post. So this is a statement from Larian at r/Baldur's Gate 3. Um, there was a fix that had an unintended consequence of causing unnoticed thefts and acts of vandalism to remain stuck forever within the "Did anyone see me" pipeline. And rather than timing out and moving on as it is intended, uh, essentially your DM in a real world sense constantly thinks about the acts of theft and violence the player keeps doing without ever moving on or verbalizing them, mulling on it ad infinitum. These unnoticed and eternally active acts of theft and violence eventually bog down the game. The more a player commits those acts, the more the game is trying to keep that all up to date and in memory, and so the more slowdowns start happening. Essentially, the DM eventually becomes unable to operate, and by act 3, this caused all the slowdown issues,
Damn.
and
And
that's solved in patch 5.
And it's probably at its worst in Act 3, not just because the longer that the game goes on, the more that happens, but also like there's so many variables that already has to account for in Act 3, and I wouldn't be shocked if that already bogged down process just gets exacerbated once you reach Baldur's Gate itself.
Yeah, that's a crazy reason. Like that's hilarious.
They also introduced an honor mode, which is basically like an Iron Man mode. And then they also introduced like a lot more custom difficulty settings, which actually kind of reminds me about some of the difficulty settings in the Owlcat Pathfinder games, where you could say like, what is your power versus the enemy? Or can the enemy critical hit or not? Are there death saving throws or not? So basically, do you need to worry about revivify scrolls? You can multiply how much camping costs? Basically, you can tailor beyond the initial slate of difficulty modifiers. So those things seem pretty neat. And I guess if you're able to beat honor mode, you get a golden D20. Like they have a different like graphics that you can put for the
Nice.
die that you roll for the decision making. And then also patch 5 is going to be the version that is on the disc for the Xbox version of the game.
Oh, cool.
We got a couple more little tiny notes here before we go into release dates. We did get some English story trailers for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I'll be honest, I didn't watch these because I'm not really interested in the English version, and I've already kind of gotten my taste from
I think these are
demo
just the
of
same
the
trailers they've had
guidance.
before, just in
Yeah,
English.
yeah, they're just the same
Oh,
trailers.
okay.
They just revealed that hey, Daniel Day Kim is voicing Masataka Ibina, and Danny Trejo is voicing Dwight. Dub
Mhm.
for the game. Very, very talented, stellar
Mhm.
actors.
Yeah.
I kind of listed some of the previous games they worked on. Like Daniel Day Kim is obviously most notable for his role as Johnny Gat in Saints Row.
Mhm.
And then
And then I don't think.
they also mentioned in like the email that we got for this is that the Like a Dragon Gaiden English dub update will be coming in December sometime.
And then I don't think I stated this on the podcast. I stated it after we recorded in early November. Um, Like a Dragon Gaiden, that last scene, you had teased it. It is something. I cried. I'll keep
Mm.
it like that.
Mm.
It's 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 good and also very sad, but
Mhm.
good.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really excited for Infinite Wealth.
Yeah.
So that's basically the first game in 2024 that I have kind of like day one mindset for circled on my calendar. A new DLC for a game that came out earlier in April. That is Wartales. So that is one that both Josh and I have taken different opportunities to speak to in the first half of the year. They've announced their Pirates of Belerion DLC, which adds a new region, adds seafaring, and adds duels. If you remember or listen to our podcast when we talk about War Tales, it's kind of a non-linear game where the way the game structure is divided is through like different continents or different areas. Like each quote unquote chapter of the game is going to a different area of the map and learning about that local area's kind of political strife and the sorts of combat encounters that you encounter there, et cetera, et cetera. So this seems like a very kind of standard sort of here's a new area if you grab this DLC, which is coming on December 14th. I don't know if we've gotten a price for the DLC. the DLC is a paid DLC, but it comes with a free update that does some more quality of life features alongside. We see a lot of developers do this, where they'll pair a free update alongside the paid DLC. I enjoyed Wartales a fair bit, but I'm not really eager. Like I put like 100 hours into it, and I'm not really eager to go back to just to see a new region.
Yeah, I think
it's cool that they're supporting it.
Yeah, it's really cool because like it's definitely one of those like games that can feel endless, and you can kind of keep on building and building and building your party like to however fucking big you want it to be. So there's like a pretty cool addition, just like the expanded, like, you know, you have naval battles now, and all that sort of stuff. But it is definitely one of those games like it can feel, if you're trying to marathon or like you're not like spacing it out, it can feel pretty like I guess tiresome, I guess, almost, because there's so much to do in that game, and it feels like it takes a long time to do that.
And then one thing that I struggled with, clearly not a lot because I played it through to the end, but some of the regions didn't feel too distinct from one another. Like in one region, the main conflict was like a plague, so you're fighting a lot of like diseased people and creatures. And then in another region, the main conflict is a cult. So instead of being like diseased creatures or hooded figures, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I guess that's different, but it didn't feel too different. So this one being more seafaring and adding that whole element to it might actually feel a little bit more different.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I got my fill. I really enjoyed the base game, but I don't really see a lot of incentive to go through with my max level party and turn this out or whatever. I will say though, I remember talking about this on podcast, but back in April or so, but the original balancing of the EXP was so strange. You would EXP to level like this is one of those games where there's not levels are they're few and far between. I think the max level was, it might have been 12 again in this game too, though I might be confusing that with Baldur's Gate. But if I remember right, you get to level 6 pretty damn fast, and then it was an absolute slog to get to level 7 for some reason. Just the way that they did the math, it just completely slowed down. And the best way to get EXP was not to fight level 6 creatures, it was to fight level 1 creatures, because you could mop the floor with them much quicker and they would barely give you any reduced EXP. So that was my main I know they've had a lot of free updates since then where they've probably really smoothed out the leveling curve. If I was playing this game for the first time starting in like 2024, yeah, sure, I'd definitely tackle this DLC alongside of it, because it does really seem like it kind of changes up the kind of the flavor of the game a little bit.
I think it is pretty weird that someone did point out in social media that like this launching on December 14th for PC on like on Steam and GOG first, and then it'll come to Switch, Xbox, and PC Game Pass versions like sometime next year. It's like it's distinguishing between like the PC releases on Steam and GOG versus PC Game Pass. It's like, I guess because it has to be tied to the Xbox ecosystem.
Well, there's been some places where it's not quite explicit, but you still need to keep track of it. Like, well, the Nier Automata, I remember that was kind of a weird thing where like different version of the port released on Windows PC, and then some of those changes got kind of backported into the Steam version. And then a much lower profile game, but I played that isometric cyberpunk game, Ascent something. What was it? I'm blanking on it.
I think it's called.
Oh, was it just called The Ascent? Where I had Game Pass at the time, so I played the Game Pass version. But apparently, the Game Pass version just had way more performance issues that the Steam version didn't have, even though they were supposed to be kind of, they were described being like just the same. It's just the PC version of the game, but one had more, under the hood work done than the other. So that's always something that I bet is just going to be kind of a recurring thing going forward, unless Microsoft makes some big changes to how they deliver stuff on their PC platform. Usually it ends up being like minor, inconsequential, but sometimes like this, it ends up being a little bit more significant.
I remember when I played Jusant just last month, or was it in October? Either way, when I played that recently, there was issues with the Game Pass version where like the Steam version had DLSS, the Game Pass version didn't, and it seemed to have other bugs. And it's like something that sometimes Game Pass releases are just kind of fucked.
Yeah. Yep, unfortunately.
Interesting. Okay.
We got another trailer for a RPG coming out next summer, a side scroller called Tsurugihime. This was shown during the Indie Live Expo Winter Showcase.
I'd like to point out that that title, I believe, just means Sword Princess.
Yep.
Tsurugihime. So,
Yeah, this is by Fahrenheit 213, which is a new studio, but the staff of this was pretty interesting when they announced it. This was by the director is Yosuke Shiokawa. He was the first director on Fate Grand Order. No longer is the director on that, and separated from the Lightworks some time back. Also worked on Kingdom Hearts and the City of Final Fantasy. Character design is by Kuroboshi Kohaku, who's done Kino's Journey and Sword Art Online Alternative, Gun Gale Online. And then, of course,
Summon Night.
And Summon Night.
I had to point that out because that's like the only one of those things I'm familiar with.
Thank you. And of course, a composer that a lot of diehard RPG fans know, Takeharu Ishimoto, most well known for the World Ends With You series. Of course, also contributed to Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy Type
He's
Zero.
kind of one of those sneaky composers who does a lot of Kingdom Hearts stuff that Shimomura gets credit for. But like, no, Ishimoto's done a lot too. So
yeah. So I've been kind of keeping an eye on the development of Tsurugihime. Seems like a really, really cool debut project from this new studio from the staff there. It's basically obviously very action combat heavy focused, and a lot of it is almost like crafting like your own move set and strings, depending on like the weapon type that. So they're going for definitely if you're a fan of like very fast frantic action combat, almost Devil May Cry esque, but in a 2D side scroller. This might be one you might want to look out for. I'm definitely keeping an eye on. It's, and also the trailer has sort of like bullet hell elements, like some bosses just spew out a ton of bullets on the screen.
And we'll just kind of keep going through for the rest of the podcast, just releases in chronological order for the rest of 2023 and into 2024. So we already kind of teased this one. Final Fantasy Ever Crisis is coming out in a few days as of the time of recording. It'll be coming out on Steam on December 7th. We do have at the end of the year on New Year's Eve a Fate Project New Year's TV special. And I think Josh, you mused that this is might be where we see DLC for Fate Samurai Remnant.
Yeah,
we know there's DLC coming, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they'll probably just show like what that DLC consists of. I think last year's Fate project at the end of it, that's when they actually announced Fate Samurai Remnant for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also usually a program where they announce new Fate games in general out of nowhere, on top of like your usual Fate Grand Order up north. So always crossing my fingers for hey, I'm always down for a new Fate game. Why not?
We have an announcement that Playism will publish Momodora Moonlit Farewell on PC on January 11th. So this was one that Adam, I think you just put up maybe as we were recording. So I don't know the background of this one.
Basically,
here. It looks like we haven't covered it for a while.
Momodora is a side scroller series. It's RPG-ish. You could argue it's not, but there's like HP and stats. But Momodora is a game series by Bomb Service, and it's one of those series where like no one really knew about the first two Momodora games, or maybe even the first three. And then like Reverie Under the Moonlight was like a prequel that kind of exploded in that indie PC game sphere that is pretty popular. And then this game is actually like a follow up to Momodora 3, which even the creator was like, now I know a lot of you aren't really actually familiar with Momodora 3 because you played the other games and not that one, but don't worry, you can play this without prior knowledge. But he calls this the culmination of the Momodora series. So
I still feel kind of bad for the dev because I remember originally he was making a Momodora in 3D, and then people were so angry that it wasn't a 2D side scroller that he basically canceled it, and then Minoria was made as the next game. So it's like I feel like I understand why they wouldn't want to make another like 3D attempts because you don't know how the fan base is going to react, especially after the last time it went down. But it's like it sucks. It's like you gave them another 2D side scroller. You probably shouldn't have because you're the developer. Make what you fucking want to. But it's like I don't know. It's like I would have been interested to see what that project could have been, and now they're making another Momodora. It's like sure I'll play this. I'm sure it'll be great because like I played 3. I played the what was it, Reverie Under the Moonlight?
Yeah,
I think,
and
yeah.
then Minoria. Did you play that?
And all of those were good. So I'm sure this will be good. But it's also like, man, it's like there's not many 3D Metroidvanias. I would have been interested to see what it would have felt like.
It's also this isn't here or there, but like this game was actually originally announced in January 2022, so almost 2 years ago. And I'm sure there's been like little updates here and there from the developer if you like follow him directly, but they hadn't really like Playism, the publisher, hadn't really said anything since. I actually forgot when I saw this trailer for this game for a split second. I'm like, oh, they announced a new Momodora, and then I was like, wait a minute, this was actually announced already. I just forgot because it was so long ago. So
yeah, it's tough. Like I really like Reverie Under the Moonlight as well, so I'll definitely check out this new Momodora. But it's so difficult to kind of make this like the overall switch to like a new dimension, especially when 95-100% of your install base kind of expects a new thing. It's kind of like the risk that the developers Risk of Rain had to do with Risk of Rain 1 to 2, and
I remember
that really worked out well in their favor.
I remember that like Hapu actually got a lot of pushback against Risk of Rain 2 when it was in early development, because people, when they looked at the early footage, were like, oh, this isn't Risk of Rain, it's gonna suck. And then it came out and like, whoops, Risk of Rain 2 is the best game that they've made. So it's like,
and sort of similarly, it's not like in the same series, but actually a couple weeks ago we talked about the developer Massive Damage. They're the ones who released Star Renegades. And I like that game, especially how it looked. And then like their new game is like a 3D game, and just kind of my gut reaction is I like the 2D pixel art style. I'm a little bit upset that you're doing just like a 3D sort of more normal.
You're part of the problem.
Now.
Yeah, but
let them do what they want.
Imagine they did like a Star Renegades, except it wasn't sci-fi. It's like a totally new set. It's like maybe a medieval fantasy version of Star Renegades. Like,
because their new
essentially
game
that sounds fucking awesome.
Their new game is Pharaoh the Sundered Tribes, and I guess I'll like keep an eye on it. But it's just like, man, I really liked how Star Renegades looked. So
yeah, so it's so difficult. I can't fault the developer for feeling that way.
That was again Momodora Moonlight Farewell on January 11th for PC. We already talked about in March the Legend of Legacy HD Remastered. A couple delays going into 2024. Demon School, we've covered this game a handful of times. This is the indie Persona 1 and 2 like sort of game.
It's like Persona 1 and 2 stylish, but the battle system is more like tactical grid. So I'm just hedging you a bit. People are like, no, it's not like Persona. It's like, yes, we know. It's just got some inspiration.
Yeah, it's definitely more of like Into the Breach game, like systems wise. Than those. Though like the perspective of it at first definitely looks like.
So this was slated for 2023, and we're kind of like, we're running out of time in 2023, and then they've announced that they're going to be delaying it to 2024. But they did also reveal like kind of a new gameplay focused trailer alongside the delay announcement that talks about the tactical battle system that you guys brought up. So still looks really neat. Still coming out on Switch, basically last gen, this gen, Switch, PC. So all the things.
Yeah, take your time. It looks like a very promising game. I definitely want to check out full release of.
Destiny 2, The Final Shape, it got its release date moved to June 2024. I don't really have any other insight of this one.
Okay.
This is supposed to be a larger expansion for their game or something? Because they're trying to make back.
It's the Kingdom Hearts 3 of Destiny 2.
The Kingdom Hearts 3 of Destiny.
So Destiny had a bunch of. So Destiny had a bunch of, dare I say, spin-offs before like Kingdom Hearts fans gank me. Destiny had a bunch of spin-offs, and then they finally had a numerical.
It's the conclusion. Okay. It's the conclusion of the story arc that like Destiny has been going at for like over a decade now. The problem is, and there's numerous. Well, not over a decade, almost a decade now. How do I put this? Bungie has officially destroyed any goodwill they had left. Like, it was bad enough, like, to put in perspective, after the Witch Queen, the fan base was feeling really good. Lightfall, a lot of people were excited for Lightfall. It broke the peak concurrent numbers for Destiny 2 on Steam at Lightfall's launch. Lightfall was such a bomb in public perception, and the way that Bungie has handled it afterwards have been so bad up until like the most recent thing where they basically just fired a bunch of their staff in the most tone deaf possible way. It's like the player numbers are the lowest they've ever been. Public perception is the lowest it's ever been. Just this week, they've released a starter pack, which crossed the line for a lot of folks in the community where it's like, oh, you're selling these exotic weapons. What the fuck? And basically,
it's like a borderline pay to win. Or even though this guy's a starter pack, you're still getting some of the best, really good weapons. Like,
yeah, it's one of those things where like the biggest problem that Destiny has had for a long time is it's fucking impossible to get into as a new player unless you have other people to kind of like guide you through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the obvious, like, what's the first thing you think of Destiny 2 if you're not a current Destiny 2 player? You think about the fact that they removed content that people paid for multiple times. So it's like a lot of folks that do play Destiny or still play Destiny or played Destiny until Lightfall's, like Fallout, they would say, well, it was necessary, the game's better than it's ever been. And maybe that's true, but the stink was always there, so it was harder to get new players into it. And now that they've just torpedoed the remaining goodwill from the hardcore fan base, it's in a death spiral right now. So the hope is that, like, the final shape will be good, but like the prevailing thought I'm seeing from a lot of Destiny fans is that, okay, hopefully this is good so I can stop playing Destiny 2 after I finish the story. And you don't want to see that for a live service game, especially when Marathon's coming out. Because like all of the games as a service stuff that like Sony's been working on, like no good has been coming out of like the rumor mill from those projects.
Yeah, even Marathon is just like, people are just like, man, this is not the Marathon that you first pitched, and it being like an extraction shooter now, it's like, fuck.
Yeah,
dude.
it's
even for people who like who play tested it internally, they're like, this thing isn't good right now.
To put in perspective, and I fully understand this is an RPG podcast, and not everyone listening is going to get just how dire this comparison is. 343 is currently in a really good situation now with Halo Infinite. People are happy with the state of Halo Infinite. People are happy with Forge. People are happy with the current season and the content pipeline and how the game feels to play. Juxtapose that with how people feel with Bungie right now, and it's like, if you had said that Halo Infinite is in a more positive state than Destiny 2 even a year ago, people would have called you insane.
Yeah, that's kind of
truly a Uno card reverse moment.
It's kind of like the state of these things. It's a roller coaster, man. It's there'll be good times, there'll be bad times, and sometimes there'll be just drunken dire times. I don't know. We'll see how this goes, but yeah, Bungie is just, it doesn't look very promising for Bungie, and who knows how they're going to turn it around.
So the next update is for Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. So we learned earlier this year in June that it was going to be delayed to 2024, and at that time we just got a press release announcing the delays. And now this week it looks like, Josh, you wrote this news post that they've just dialed in on a summer window for 2024, and then in addition they've given a new gameplay trailer alongside.
Yeah, it's part of the PC gaming show event this week. It's like, hey, new trailer, and then they just showed the summer 2024. Yeah, the interesting thing is, I guess they've also canceled the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions, because previously it was announced for those platforms, but now in the new press release and the end of the trailer, it only lists PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. No more PS4 and Xbox One. I'm presumably.
I mean, we're going into what, year 4? When did PS5 come out?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big surprise. It's just like, but they just haven't come out and said it officially. It's just like, yeah, that's just what I surmise
just based on the logos that show up.
and the press release
yeah.
that they showed that they sent us only listed those platforms. So, okay, I guess.
Anyways, this game is
Unfortunately,
an action RPG. This character, I don't know her name. It's like a female
Norvanic.
character. Sorry?
Norvanic.
Norvanic. She wields like an axe and a flintlock gun, which of course she does. It's the name of the game. It's from a New Zealand developer. I will probably play this. I'm always looking for like these mid-budget, mid-tier Western games and wondering if I can find one that's like excellent. Still looking. Sometimes do.
when's the last time we had one that was excellent?
I don't know.
It's been a while. Elex 1 had promise. And then Elex 2 was, sorry, it was not good at all. I always hate sounding so dogmatic.
Wasn't that the game you called the peak of Eurojank?
Yeah,
and then this one can't be Eurojank though because it's New
Dude,
Zealand.
oh my god! My only memory of Elex 2 is tuning into Bryan's stream and the you died screen whenever he died, and it was like the most just basic, simple like you died screen. It's like boom, you died. Okay,
it's like a sans serif white font, I believe. And it's like you died.
I loved it. I was like,
this does remind me of Atlas Fallen, which Atlas Fallen was close to being like it could have been good if it had done a couple things better, but it didn't quite reach that bar.
Yeah,
so
I think Atlas Fallen is worse than both Surge games. So it's kind of like going in the wrong direction here.
I mean, it's something different. At least they tried something different.
It is different. So, but
yeah.
So, well, what about has anyone here played the new Lords of the Fallen yet? I know
James
it's asking us to.
A bit of it.
Oh, okay. I don't know how small that team was, but that game was received pretty damn well.
Yeah,
maybe that.
Yeah, they're updating it a lot.
Yeah, every time I boot up my PS5, I keep getting patches, and it's slowing me down.
It's one of those games that like it launched like in a pretty like not the best state, but then they really made a commitment like to updating it to be the best that it can be. They have this whole roadmap already of like all the improvements and additions they're gonna make, and addressing like like some of like the more things that like a lot of the fan or the player base had issues with, like the enemy density, for example. So it's definitely one of those games like it's launched in a somewhat solid state, but then they're trying to make good on like the final state of it.
It's a good thing. I mean, most video games, once they release it, they just don't give a shit about it anymore. So it's great that they're going back to support and make it better.
I mean, yeah, like it also definitely is, of course, like a big thank you to like the people that like the sales that it got as well. It's like, hey, thank you so much for supporting us, and of course they're definitely more incentivized to like make it better because it sold very, very well as their debut game, and once again, this is a game that's like their debut title was a AAA project, and it's like that's.
Are you talking about Lords of the Fallen?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I pulled up their LinkedIn page. Yeah, some of this we talked about during the announcement, but I had never gone back to review it since October. Hexwork, based in Spain, and it looks like based on LinkedIn between like 60 and 80 employees. So pretty much exactly what we're looking for. Kind of like one of those like, and founded in 2020. So basically, pretty new on the scene. Came out of the gate with the bang.
And that's a pretty like compared to like other AAA titles, like that's a pretty short development cycle too.
Mm-hmm. That one might be on my list for trying to get that. I will definitely not, unfortunately, have a chance to play that before the Game of the Year podcast, but we'll kind of see, before Infinite Wealth, making that like a mid-January game if I can make time for it. And then, of course, what got us on this tangent in the first place, Flintlock Siege of Dawn, summer 2024, new gameplay trailer. And then Josh teased us on this earlier, but Dissidia, Final Fantasy Opera Omnia will be shut down, both the Japanese and global edition, in February 2024. It launched, it looks like, in 2017, 2018.
Yeah, I think the lasting legacy of Opera Omnia, honestly, is it had so many like characters, both popular and niche.
Yeah, we all love those characters that they added from Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember they added a character. I can't even remember their name.
Here, I'm gonna put this voice channel chat. It's basically all the characters that like I think that were added to Opera Omnia. Just take a look at this list of like just the amount of like niche characters they added to this game. It's pretty nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a cool project for that, like having the big FF crossover. In a capacity that was never been done before, like more so than like the PSP Dissidia games, obviously. Um, but unfortunately, will not be able to like reach like it won't add any FF16 characters. Clive will not make it into Opera Omni before it shuts down. So, and I had a lot of friends that like really loved Opera Omnia. It was a very friendly sort of game to like you didn't have to spend much on it if at all. Like a lot of players never spend a cent on this game, which is probably why one of the contributing factors why I checked out, because maybe it's a bit too generous. Um, but it had a good run. 7 years as Chow said, not bad. And we'll see where they if they're gonna ever make another Dissidia project. Because outside of this, the only other Dissidia games were the original Dissidia Final Fantasy game on PSP. Then you had the 012 Duodecim sequel. Then you had the arcade game for Japanese arcades, and then the home release of the arcade game was like Dissidia NT. So I would like to see more Dissidia games. Preferably not like the coolest thing they could do is like make an offline version of Opera Omnia. Just like how they did Mega Man X Dive. Just one price, you pay into it and you get all the content that it ever released with.
I
That'd be
would do that
fucking
for
cool.
any dead gotcha game.
Yeah.
I feel like they made all these assets, and just poof. If it's end of certain, it's all gone. Just kind of waste. You know, like
Mhm.
one of the things, like let's just say Dragalia lost, even though it's dead now. That game still has a pretty decent story, and the soundtrack is fire.
Oh, dude, I fucking love the Dragalia soundtrack so much.
It's like, how are we gonna get the soundtrack now? It's like there's
Yeah,
no.
there's a lot of good songs that came out for it. Yeah, so if they ever did like a Dragalia Lost offline release that you paid for one time to get all the content that it released with, I'd be there day one. Like I bought Mega Man X Dive offline, and I really like what they did with that game for the offline version. Like that's really cool. I can forever immortalize like Halloween Sigma.
At
Hell yeah, you
least it's
know.
not a virus anymore, is it?
I mean, I guess not. In some ways, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I wish that game like sets a precedent for that. I would love to see more or less like, okay, your game reached end of service. Please make it accessible in some way, shape, or form. Do it in the way that Mega Man X Dive did it, and not the way that Yuki Yuna as a hero did it. Because what Yuki Yuna as a hero did it is like almost like a scam. It's like the home release of that is basically I think like 6 volumes, or it's like more than 3 volumes. It's like that's like $60 each, and it's basically just like the visual novel bits of the Yuki Yuna as a hero for the mobile release. It's not none of the gameplay, only the visual novel story parts, which is fine. But that pricing model of like
That
of
kills all the goodwill.
separate releases that are like $60 each. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
That's still asking a little bit too much.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Like,
I
come on,
forgot.
guys.
What was that Castlevania gotcha game that turned into single player? Did that have?
That's Apple Arcade now. And that you didn't pay for anything in that. It's just Apple Arcade released. Like it still had like the gotcha thing. But you still gain currency to expand a gotcha. But you didn't have to pay any money for it. It's just Apple Arcade subscription.
Hmm.
But it also had like dailies and weeklies to get more of that currency. But you couldn't buy that currency at all. You just had to like play it as a live service game without any of the monetization live service game had.
So let's just say if there's a unit, you can't whale your way to get it. I guess
I
you'll
guess you
just
have to get. I think you have to like earn your way through it. You have to keep on playing and playing until you eventually earn it. I think, if I remember correctly. I don't remember too much. It's like that still isn't a great solution, right? Because it feels like
yeah,
it feels like you're being gated off of like arbitrarily.
yeah.
Um,
Just follow the Mega Man solution. That's the
you
one
know,
all button, I
If
guess.
you, yeah, yeah, it feels like the Mega Man solution is like kind of like the best solution, to be honest, because you're paying one price and you're getting all the content and you pay for it. If you want to like get the characters in it, they give you as you progress through like the main storyline, they give you like an abundance of like that currency to like buy them from the in-game store. That's all in-game currency only. I think that's a decent solution.
I got lost on this tangent. Opera Omnia.
What's your favorite Opera Omnia character? Was it Raijin from FF8? Is that your favorite Opera Omnia character?
God, not the clowns from FF8.
Hey man, they were so cool. Fusion? Hell yeah. Cypher? He's so cool.
Let me pick one character from this list.
Kais from Crystal Bears.
There you go.
Jill and the Bot.
Everyone loves Jill.
Everyone
the person who everyone thought was going to have a bigger role, and then she didn't.
Nope.
You know what? I'm a Jill fan. I've decided right now. I'm a Jill.
But yep, that's the last news headline of the last regular Tetracast of 2023. So we've made it. And I think this is a really good episode. So I think we got to cover a lot of ground, both in terms of games we've played, in terms of site side stuff, in terms of looking forward to 2024. Of course, we'll get a lot more of that by design next week. So we're recording this on the 2nd. As normal, we'll get this podcast up hopefully either by the end of today or early on Sunday on the 3rd. That's Western Hemisphere. And then on next week, we will be recording the Game of the Year podcast, but then that is paired with a lot of written features, etc. So we will likely take the week of the 16th off so that we can focus on those. And we'll reconvene, it looks like, likely on January 6th. Probably, is the first recording date of 2024, likely, that we'll be doing a regular episode. So that would be, of course, catching up, like Josh said, on we probably won't be able to hit every headline, and by that point, a lot of those will kind of be old news anyway. But we'll recap any of the big outcomes of things like the Game Awards or anything else that comes out in December, etc., and talk about some of the December releases like Warhammer Rogue Trader potentially, or Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. So
we're not recording a podcast. We're not recording a podcast 2 days before Christmas or New Year's Eve or the day before
I just skipped those. No, I'll call in on my phone on Discord and be like, "Hello, terrible audio. We're eating ham.
Yeah,
I'm opening presents."
But once again, to all our listeners, thank you once again. Thank you for choosing our podcast to be one of the ones that you listen to, if not the only one that you listen to. We're all incredibly grateful for that, and hopefully we can keep this going for as long as we can. Until then, we'll see you, the next year, pretty much. And so happy holidays from all of us. Have a safe one.
Yeah, so if you can't listen to the podcast, what you should do is you should follow us on Twitter or X, x.com/RPG site, Facebook, RPG site, discord.gg/RPG site. Go to our webpage, comment on the articles at rpgsite.net. And then, of course, rate us wherever you listen to us, whether it's Spotify, whether it's on the podcast post itself, Google Podcasts for as long as that's still around, et cetera, et cetera. We will be recording the podcast next week for the Game of the Year. We're excited to figure out, because we don't know the results of that. Even at the time we start recording it, we won't know the results. So I'll be eager to see exactly where we end up with all the end of the Game of the Year stuff and publishing that at the start of the year. So yeah, have a good holiday season. Have a good winter holiday. Hopefully you get a nice break off school or work, or if not, hopefully you have some nice time to play a few good games. And we'll catch up back with you in January. So again, thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to y'all later.
The year of level 5 once more.